But I also have this experience. So if things get hard, I can always pull back on this and I can say, this is a hard situation. I can identify that. But have I done hard things before? Yes, I have. So I'm going to cross this challenge off too, and I'm going to work through it. I'm going to remember this. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. It's a life podcast. It's a life story podcast. It's an open journal dive into people's lives as I sit and I uncover the real story behind my guest's journey, finding out what makes them who they are and all that they do, digging into the parts of their story that we otherwise wouldn't get to hear. I am your host. My name is Ross Theisen. I'm a creative of many kinds, a self-employed maker of many things, and as you probably guessed, one of those things I actively do is indeed podcasting, as I bring you a couple different shows at this point, but this one in particular right here, I bring you every other Monday as well as sporadically on Fridays for those 15-minute Friday episodes. And honestly, this is a good time. Here's a reminder that if you do want to check something else out that I do, I've got some options for you. The first of those options being an improv comedy podcast. It's called Whose Life Is It Anyway? It's like this show, pretty much, but imagine if the guest's life story was completely made up and really stupid, and there's a bunch of improv games and guidelines guiding the conversation along, and there's just a lot of messy chaos around the story. And then there's my newest show. It's called Honestly Same, where myself and two of my very best friends and co-hosts, Leah and Brittany, we sit down to talk all things life. We discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, maybe the sexy sometimes, and our experiences around it all. So yeah, I honestly don't talk about those other shows on here probably as much as I should, because of course, I want you to check those shows out too. I want you to like those ones as well. Options, folks. I have options for your entertainment, and I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. And thankfully, I'm able to create all of these shows under my own podcast network now at this point, not only thanks to you wonderful people for listening, but there's some amazing supporters of myself in this show, those of which I'm going to tell you about right now, so you can go and check them out and support them if you do see fit. First, it's our longest running sponsors. It's our friends over at Promo West Productions. Now, Promo West is one of the lead concert promoters, not just here in Ohio, but in a few different places. But right now, I've got some Ohio concerts to tell you about. So if you're interested in catching a live show, then pay attention to the following list, because you maybe will want to check out one of these upcoming concerts brought to you by Promo West right here in Columbus. They've got OAR at Kemba Live Outdoor on Saturday, June 10th. Yes, I did indeed say outdoor. Summer is right around the corner. We're going to be hanging outside for shows, and that's dope. So yeah, OAR at Kemba Live Outdoor, Saturday, June 10th. Sparta at Newport Music Hall on June 11th. Pixies at Kemba Live Outdoor on June 12th. And then Joseph at Newport Music Hall on June 13th. So, if you want to grab tickets to any of those shows, you can jump to axs.com, or, as always, for more information on these or any other upcoming concerts, if you want to find out who's coming to town here in Ohio or any of their other venue locations, you can find all the info you need for that at promowestlive.com. Now, another sponsor that is ever so fitting for this episode and my guest is our friends over at Midwest Photo. Now, Midwest Photo is a video, audio, and, well, of course, a photo store located right here in Columbus. So, what all is inside the walls of Midwest Photo? Well, there's plenty of reasons that I have went there over the years, as well as my guest, Josh Emerick, has went there over the years, whether it's to purchase some camera gear ranging from everything from cameras themselves to lighting, backdrops, tripods. The list goes on. Fun facts, one of the tripods that I filmed this show on was purchased from Midwest Photo, and the yellow backdrop that I take all of my guest portraits on also came from Midwest Photo. But the list goes on all the way down to small things like SD cards. They have it all. Now, of course, if you're not looking to purchase, the good news is they offer gear rental as well. It's in a list of many services that they're very rad and very helpful staff are ready to help you with the moment you walk in the door. But along with rentals, they also offer full in-house printing services, film development and scanning, used gear, buy and sell, and even classes that you can take so you can further your knowledge about the art and craft behind photography. Now, the cool thing is when you shop with them, you're not just supporting local and shopping small, but you just support folks who love photography and the creative world in general and work to support the local community here in Columbus. So go check them out. If you do, tell them that Ross at What You Don't Hear sent you their way. If you want to find more information on everything that they're about, you can follow them online at impex_photo_video, or simply jump to impex.com. That's MPEX.com. And I cannot thank them enough for sponsoring this episode. So speaking of this episode, let's get to it. Let's get to the story and the conversation this week. Let's get to this week's guest. You already tapped on this episode. You know who it is, but what kind of podcast host would I be if I didn't give a proper intro here at the beginning? So this week, I bring back my very close personal friend, someone who is like a brother to me. I've got Josh Emerick back on the show, but this time, not for a 15-minute Friday, like he's been popping back on for pretty repeatedly, pretty often here on the show. He's been on a lot of 15-minute Fridays for those smaller topic-based episodes, but this one is for a brand new full story sit-down with Josh. We chat about his life kind of in a whole new way in this one as we sit down for the long haul conversation again for the first time since his first full story interview on this show that we recorded actually back in his kitchen back in 2019 as I was just beginning to gather the first few episodes to even create this show and make it public. So needless to say, there's been a lot of life that's happened since then, and we're going to hear about it all in this brand new catch-up episode with Josh. So let's get to it. Let's dive into it. This is seriously a really good one, and I'm real stoked to get it out there. So here it is, episode 85 of What You Don't Hear, with an update and a return to the story of my guest, Josh Emerick. Yeah, so what have you been up to?
I don't know.
That's the best I could do. I gotta say, I have to pretend that I have no idea what you've been doing since you were last on this show.
Yeah.
Outside of the 15-minute Fridays, because I think everybody's gonna know. Yeah, you've been on plenty of 15-minute Fridays.
Yeah.
So you've been back on the show multiple times since then. But I need to hopefully be a good interviewer for this conversation. I got to act like I have no idea what you've been doing since 2019.
I got to remind myself that I'm not like best friends with you and I don't talk to you all the time and just talk to you like I haven't been around you all the time too.
Yeah, because you can't just sit and be like, well, like the other day when we were doing the, we did that thing. Although,
yeah.
I mean, that's going to slip through.
It is.
But
I'm just going to embrace that if I'm being totally honest.
The big moments I have to try and not refresh myself on, so I can be like, so yeah, tell me about that thing that you did. What was that like? And then just sit back and be like, oh yeah, I was there for that. I know everything that happened with that. But I have to pretend like I don't, because you're back on the show.
Yeah.
But this time for a full length conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Been on for a lot of 15-minute Fridays. Now we're sitting back down, I would say, to catch up, but that's not really appropriate. But I also think, for me, having done this show for 3 years now, I think I've officially hit a part of doing something that has been long enough where I've broken through that barrier of like, now there's time that I can actually reflect on. Mm-hmm. It's not just like, oh yeah, last year when we did that episode, or oh, when I had that guest on a couple months ago, whatever it is. It's like, okay, the show's been around for a minute. And when you were on, you were in the first 10 episodes of this show.
Yep.
And I was recording those first 10 before I ever launched the show. And I launched in January of 2020, but we were recording in the last half of 2019.
Yeah. I think it was August of 2019.
Yeah. And also there was no studio at that point in
We
time.
literally did it in my kitchen.
In your kitchen at your house is where we set up all the microphone. It wasn't any of this. Of course, there was no video. At least now, I mean, you get in with the 15-minute Fridays, but at least now you get a full story episode on video.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty cool, actually.
Your full story episode will get to be on YouTube, even though we're not going to retell your story, but we're just going to maybe catch it up from there. But the point that I was making with having done this for 3 years now, there's that space that I'm getting. It's to brag. I've been doing this for 3 years. I wanted you to come on the show again just so you could tell me how cool 3 years have been of me doing this show.
Oh, I will.
Yeah, no, you can just go ahead and do it now, and then we'll cut. Then we're done.
I'm literally going to tell you how cool it is. I'm going to interrupt this thought. No, I'm going to interrupt this thought. I'm taking over. I'm taking over. I'm taking over.
All right. This is why you've been on for 3 years.
I just want to say, to start this thing off, one, it's been really great to be, in a supportive player in some ways, to see you make this show, for you to give me a platform in different ways, to be able to share my story, to honestly kind of bring me into the podcast world back then, but also consistently get to show up on here, because now there are so many people that interact with me that think I'm a podcaster, and I totally am not. I just love being a guest, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
But for me, having the secondhand excitement, seeing you build this show over the last 3 years, has genuinely been, something that makes me excited, because there's been all these little milestones and improvements, whether it's a new studio, whether it's bringing in video, whether it's bringing in different lighting, talking about these things, and like seeing you be the visionary. And this feels like the perfect case scenario where I've got to help you indirectly and directly in a lot of ways. So it's been really fun, and I've reaped a lot of benefits, whether as a listener or as a guest on this show, because I feel inspired. I feel like I get to hear all these stories. So anytime I get to be on a show, but especially yours, it is really exciting for me, and seeing you push through for all these years, I'm grateful.
Yeah. And of course, I'm stoked that you've been here for all of this sort of stuff and said it. Whenever something gets complimented visually, they're like, "Man, your show looks great." And I'm like, "Yeah, like I know why it looks great, but somebody else helped me set that up. So awesome, here we are." But it's all of those things. It's all of those different growth points and all that sort of stuff. All of that to say, reflecting back, looking back on all the episodes, the fact that you were on in the first 10, yes, we do everything together all the time pretty much, right? We know what each other have been up to. So that's not necessarily the point of this episode, right? But it is more so, it's that reflection point. And you and I have, we've talked about your episode, the very first one, and you've changed so much since that episode. I know we can joke about it, but you look back on that episode and you're like, I don't even know what I was doing. We talked about your story. We talked about growing up. The antithesis of what this show is there. But you've also grown so much, like you said, as a podcast guest, and being able to speak and articulate points in different ways and storytell in different ways. I remember at one point in time, your episode got taken off the feed. It got
I was
deleted.
so excited.
There was a back end issue where the first, 10 or 20 episodes got just taken down, not deleted, but taken down. And I didn't even know that, but you were secretly oh, nice. My first episode isn't up there anymore. Because obviously, not to say you're not confident in that episode. And this isn't the point of doing this one, is not to redo everything. We're not changing any of that. But it is interesting to be able to sit down now, having gotten tons of reps in of, you're now coaching, and there's another kid, your child in your life, and there's obviously so much has happened in our creative world since then. And from that reflection point of looking back on the last 3 years, I've been even looking back at old episodes in general, whether I'm sitting back down with somebody like you right now, or even just looking back at those old episodes that I honestly felt like had kind of lost their value in a way. I think I was so far removed from them at this point that I was like, oh, those are the original episodes. There's no way that they're that good. But I forgot that, I made this show with an actual intention and purpose, and I was following that purpose from the very beginning. So even checking out some of those old episodes, which I don't know when this one will drop exactly, but I'll be reposting some of those old episodes because I do think they deserve to be put back in the spotlight a little bit, especially now that there's a new listener base. Again, 3 years, a lot can happen in 3 years. A lot of growth has happened in 3 years. So that's even, I think, the value of us sitting back down, even though we do know what each other have been up to this entire time. I think it would be fun to obviously rehash anything that you want to rehash. But I think the cooler point of looking back at your story now, and of course, catching people up of what you've been up to since 2019, is that I feel like not just has your life changed and there's been a bunch of new things that have happened and new understandings, but it's more so your perspective and knowledge on all of those things has changed.
For sure.
So it's like even getting to look back at, I'm sure now, and I don't know, like, I'm sure now you could look back at your story that you shared on that episode and be like, why did I explain this in this way? Or, oh my gosh, like now I understand that point I was trying to make even better of how that related to my childhood, that lesson I learned, like whatever. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. And I think kind of the biggest thing is like, we're all growing all the time. We all have new stories. And what I love about this show as a listener is like knowing that this isn't the end, this isn't anyone's arrived. And it's like, when I did that, it's like I was a different person. I'm not drastically different, but I have new information, new experiences, new things to be excited about, more clarity, whatever the case may be. And when I look back on that episode, it's just like, it's a little bit cringy to me, but also like I look at that as a good thing because I have grown a lot. I have changed a lot. And I'm like, wow, I'm really grateful to be the Josh I am today instead of the Josh I was then. That's what I want. I always say this thing, like, I don't want to peak now. I think a lot of people, when I talk to, is like, they want the exciting thing. They want the big thing. And I've always been really patient about the journey. I'm so patient about stuff, like painfully patient. But because of that, it's like, I always say, I don't want to peak until I'm 80, maybe not even then, because if I peak, it's all downhill from there. So when I look back on that stuff, yeah, it's a little bit cringy, but I think anyone can look back on that. I look at things 6 months ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, and I'm like, wow, I've changed a lot. That's really gross to kind of look at, but I'm glad that I've grown. I'm glad that I'm having new experiences, and I'm glad that I'm not settling.
Yeah. Well, something in that, like, to kind of dive back in, honestly, and we can, I want to kind of formally establish, in case there is like anybody listening to that, maybe they are checking this one out for the first time, they didn't check back on episode 7 or whatever you were. So I do want to kind of reestablish, because there is a major question of something you brought up in there that honestly kind of sparked my first point I want to ask you. But before that, reintroduce Josh Emerick. Who is Josh Emerick now? Because I think you can articulate and describe who you are a lot differently now than you may have then. So reintroduction right now, let's just say somebody, maybe they do know you, but they're really going to get to know you for the first time here. Or maybe they do want to see the difference. Like, all right, what was he like first episode to the second episode? Who's Josh Emerick? Who are we sitting down with today?
All right. So, yeah, I'm Josh Emerick. I'd say in the simplest term, I'm a video producer. I'm a creative business coach. Those are kind of the two avenues in which I do things. However, what I'm really passionate about, what I really love to do, is I love to demystify music. Or I like to demystify videos, whether that's commercial, whether that's music videos, whether that's weddings, whether that's freelance. I like to make this really complex, and I'd say arguably really anything. I like to simplify things to where people can understand them, they can wrap their head around them, and they can get excited about the experience around those things. I like to be a player, as much as, everyone in business is like, you got to be the business owner, you got to do the things, and you got to delegate. I love to be the coach, the leader, as well as the player on the field at the same time. And to me, that's been a real gift, and that's what's kind of guided me towards the more mentorship, the coaching side of things. And, to all of that, it all leads back to me being a father, a husband, having the kiddos, and creating a lifestyle that I'm excited about. That's who I am today.
So just to get it out of the way up front in this episode, are we going to talk about arm wrestling?
We're going to bypass arm wrestling, and I'm just going to recap it to this, guys. If you listen to the last episode, if there's anything, I feel like I'm a rebel in many ways. This comes back to the demystifying video. For me, I love to challenge the norm. That's the key takeaway from that last episode. If there's anything, is like, yes. I've always been one to want to be the underdog, want to help the underdog, want to challenge the norm, want to be the rebel that goes against the grain in many ways, because as someone who loves systems and processes to make themselves creative, for me, I'm like, how can I challenge the way someone thinks? How can I challenge the way things are done? And that, for me, has been the thing that has opened more doors for me. And the more that's become clearer over the years, that's what I lean into any opportunity I can get.
Now, outside of the arm wrestling thing, to be honest, I mean, yes, I know you. We're super close. but I don't really remember much of anything that we talked about in that first episode. So that is the good part about us sitting back down, is realistically, there's going to be a lot of questions that even if I might know the answer to, I'm not really going to necessarily know how you're going to answer them.
Yeah.
So that's even like something I honestly am excited for, is like diving back into that, because I don't know, like I said, that was 2019. I don't really remember. So one of the first things I want to dive into is, you noted, we joked about the whole like long-term thing. Like, well, that's a joke now between us at this point. It's like, oh, that's the long game, blah, 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 blah. And then, you also just talked about the wanting to be a rebel, but wanting to be an underdog and all this sort of stuff. So my question is, where does that come from? Where does the idea of, oh, I need to be patient, I need to work the long game, and, I need to be the underdog, I need to fight from underneath, all that sort of stuff? Because I can say that, and obviously, like, you'll be able to explain it. I'm not going to speak for you, but like, I think in a way you can sit and say, like, you almost have a need to be the underdog. And even if it's sometimes not necessarily a want of like, no, I don't want to fight from underneath anymore. I think you have this natural instinct, just like you said, to say like, I'm not only going to be the coach, but I'm going to be the player on the field too. And that's neither good nor bad. I'm not saying that for that reason. But I want to dig into why. Yeah. Why do you sit and say, I'm so committed to the long game, I'm okay with being super patient, and I'm okay for fighting underneath? Like, walk me back into like when that starts to form.
Boy, that's a deep question, and I think I have a little more clarity on that now. But if I'm to go back in time, I grew up in the country. Not to rehash a bunch of this, but I'm a country boy through and through, and I have a blue-collar mindset. And so much of how I grew up was like, if you want it done, you got to do it yourself. And these days, I've gotten better at delegating, and I understand those things. But also inversely, if you're going to go against the grain, if you're going to challenge the norm, you have a new idea, you have a different way of thinking. It's a significantly faster path to get to the top if you're going to take the path that other people have taken. Whereas so often, I fought against the grain of, you need to niche down. I have a different viewpoint on this in this day and age, and I am excelling faster than I ever have in my career. If there's a hockey stick analogy, it's like I'm in that now. For a long time, I would tell myself, you just got to work hard, you got to push hard, you got to do things. That comes from my parents, my grandparents, so many different influences, different, leadership that I've been under over the years. 100% you hear that, and you get preached that message all the time. It's like, if you work hard, you'll get the things that you want, blah, blah, blah. You just got to work hard. You just got to put your head down. Well, just as much as working hard, you got to work smart. And as I've gotten more to be a systems and process type of person, a good question or a good strategy or slowing things down, I've actually found speeds things up. And I feel like the last time we talked, I was still in that, like, I'm being patient. I truly believe the work that I'm doing is going to add up to something. But over the years, whether that's reading a book, listen to a podcast, whatever the case may be, I've really come to accept varying ideas from different people. And I've started to ask myself, how does that apply to me? I love Adam Grant. I love his book, Give and Take. Anyone who knows me will know I talk about that all the time. And he has this great thing in the book that talks about, givers and the idea, givers, matchers, and takers. But he talks about how givers are both on the top and the bottom of the success chain. And I'm like, that makes sense. Nice guys finish last. You hear that a lot of time. I am not willing to compromise who I am to be unethical, to do something that is outside of the lane of my personality. At the end of the day, you can close a deal, you can close a job, you can get to the top, you can cut people off. But in my DNA is the value of people. Quality time is a deep love language of mine. When we first met, we had a 6-hour conversation, shortly after a few projects of sitting in Wendy's and just talking about our values and realizing how similar we are. It's not uncommon for me to start my relationship with people that way. And that builds deep roots, that builds trust. Is it the most effective way to get something done? Absolutely not. But for me, it's understanding people and understanding how to connect them at the right point. Understanding how they bring value to me and how I can bring value to them. Suddenly, I think back on my career when I was working very hard and persistent and slow with things. A lot of times it was just like, I just got to be a nice guy. Eventually I'll get my shot. I just need to work hard. these days it's in alignment with my goals. And this is what Adam Grant kind of talks about as an otherish giver, a giver that has direction and purpose versus just giving out of the kindness of your heart with no reason. And then you get frustrated and burn out. In the creative service field, I think we know plenty of people who get burnout. I've been there. I've almost given up over the years multiple times because I'm like, it's just not working for me. Why is that? So for me, it's just getting a little more fine-tuned of like, okay, this feels like a valuable relationship. This feels like someone I can serve and give value to. Can I be guaranteed that they're going to give anything back to me? No, but it makes me feel good to help someone else out. And I feel like I've learned something, and it's my obligation to help other people now. So I don't know. Like, I just feel like for me, I'm so patient because I know that, in past experiences, I've opened up so many doors for myself by just being myself. And the more I've leaned into who I am, this is also in being bold. It's not all like just be the nice guy. The difference between niceness and kindness, being nice is often lying to people. Just saying, yeah, that's great. That sounds awesome. Being kind is being honest. Being more kind with people and telling them that this isn't working or the way we're working together isn't sustainable. I've had to deliver some really critical feedback over the years. And past me would have been so nervous to say that. But at the same time, when I've given that critical feedback and I think that they're going to hate me or be mad, when they come back to me, I'm like, thank you for telling me that. I wasn't aware of this. I didn't realize this was causing this. At the end of the day, the mindset that I have is we all want to do good work. We all want to, do good things. Most people are mostly good and they want to do good things. They want to make an impact. So by not telling them that they're causing you negativity or frustration is honestly doing them a big disservice.
So is that something that you feel like you really uncovered, since we last chatted for a full-length episode? Was that something that you had already uncovered at that point in time? Or more so, when did you, and I'm talking whole life timeline here, when did you identify that these were the qualities that you wanted to lead with? And maybe not be able to articulate them quite that way. But yeah, we talked about the work thing. We talked about the blue collar thing and, and why the long game matters and being able to put in work and wait and be patient. But let's talk about that attitude part, the mindset part. Where was that ingrained in you? Why can you sit here now having, there's tons of stuff that we've dealt with together that you've dealt with individually since we last talked, before we last talked, all that sort of stuff that we probably covered in that episode. But let's take it back to why are you where did the foundation of any of that mindset even begin with that you can now sit and build on pretty nicely, now understanding how to put those tools to use? Where does that even start?
I've always been able to make the best of a bad situation. You can vouch for that. I mean, just about anyone who knows me knows that, I think that that's kind of been somewhat a defense mechanism in many ways is, growing up, I feel like the introvert was very present in me, and I felt like, oh, no one wants to hear from me. No one wants this. So the only way that I can get someone's attention is by serving them, is by doing something good for them, getting their attention. My father, it's he valued hard work. So it's how do I get his attention? I need to be a harder worker than my siblings. Okay. That's one example. When I went into my first, job that I was working for, my dad gave me advice. He said, find the best person in there and learn how to be as good as them. So I'm like, okay, how do I just add value? How do I get good? How do I look at other people, mirror them, and then adapt that into my own style? So I think for me, it's just always seeking out opportunities. I don't necessarily know where that comes from, but I know over the years, it started to become more present, or have labels, or have examples, or as I learned something new, I've been able to point back to areas in my career where I'm like, oh, that's where that's been valuable for me. And I think when you hear a new idea and it doesn't click for you, it's you're maybe not even ready for that. So I don't know, that ability to work hard or to see the best in a bad situation, for me, it is a little bit of a defense mechanism. I'm a pretty sarcastic person. For me, I'm there's not always a bright side, but I'm there's a lesson here. And I've always kind of looked for that because it's I don't know if it's in my DNA or whatever the case is, but it's just it's so much healthier for me to process the emotion. That's real. I can feel sad. I can feel frustrated. That's healthy. I'm not saying push that away, but what can I do right now? How can I be softer on myself? Like, a big thing that I've been reminding myself and anyone that I'm kind of in proximity with, when they start to beat themselves up or they start to let their inner critic go wild, I do this as well, is like, just asking myself, is this true? How do I be, my best friend too? Is like, would I give that advice to someone else? So why am I giving it to myself? Mental time travel, big deal for me is like, in the past, have I dealt with something like this before? Oh, I have. This sucks for sure. But how are we going to move through that? How are we going to work through that? How are we going to become better because of that? So I'd say there's always been some sense of that, but I'd say in the last 3 years, that's especially like elevated, and it's allowed me to solve problems significantly faster and in a way that like gets me excited now when we have a challenge or something. And oftentimes it's looking and seeking the difficult moments in my life to kind of work through that.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order.
Guys, I got the new mix. Cool, let's hear it.
Hot off the press. What kind of monster would do this?
Don't torture your friends and bandmates with bad mixes.
Get the modern pop-punk mixing and mastering template. Includes mixed tracks and buses for MIDI drums, vocals, guitars, bass, plus master bus processing. And you can even get Slate and Waves versions for multiple popular DAWs. Import your own stems or record directly into the template. The modern pop-punk mixing and mastering template includes everything you need to take your mix from start to finish immediately.
Do you feel like you ever look for the difficult moments too much?
I mean, yes and no. I would say the first 7 years of doing the career. So I would honestly say like 2011 to 2019, I was really looking for the difficult path. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that path was towards creative greatness, towards being as excellent at my craft as I possibly could be. And around the time that we did the podcast and the year since, like, there has been a big unlock for me in the sense of like, my creative greatness or my gift is not the technical ability of what I do. It's not the projects that I do. It's not even the clients that we work for, but it's how I relate to other people, how I help them see things from a different perspective, how I help them start to become the challenger has been like the thought process for me in recent years. So I don't know. I think in some ways I am absolutely seeking the more difficult path, but it's a little bit more intentional of like, I understand some sense of what's on the other side of this. Whereas back in the day, I looked at every opportunity as equal. Whereas now I'm like, what opportunities make the most sense? In full transparency, it's like, these days I have my family to provide for, and like having kiddos, having a wife, like, and seeing that as like the top focus for myself. It's like, it has made things a lot clearer. So yes, I want to do the difficult things because there's something great on the other end. Like in recent years, starting to go into the coaching space, like that is terrifying. But guess what? I didn't stop doing video production, say, I'm the video coach now, or I'm the creative coach now, and I'm not doing this anymore. Actually, as a matter of fact, 90% of my workload was in video production. I said, what does it look like to shift 10% of my focus into this, get the reps in? And this wasn't even in like a revenue sense. I'm talking about an energy sense. And over time, it's like that starts to become more and more prominent. I'm starting to see, this can take up a little bit more, but it's still the side. It's not the main thing. And also at the same time, like, this is two sides, and this skill over here sharpens this skill over here. It's not right. One or the other and saying, I can only do one thing. I think it's finding the values in myself and how I apply that to everything that I do so everything feels consistent and possible.
Right. So looking back to that 2019 episode of this, what, having the benefit of hindsight, what state of mind were you in at that point in time? Because you've mentioned a couple things of like, I know obviously during that time, the whole reason I started the podcast was because we had this whole wave of learning what mindset was and hearing other people speak the things that we were thinking and what positive thinking really was and how to take action and make plans and all this stuff that you and I just regurgitate all the time now, luckily in ways in which we get to help those around us, which is awesome. But at that point in time, we were really on that upswing. So I know that, it wasn't this like shrouded negativity, black cloud version of Josh at that point in time, but obviously you've grown and you've changed. So let's pick it up where we left off, even though we're, half an hour into this conversation. We've established a lot of the groundwork. So let's go back and we wrap up that 2019 interview. And yeah, we can look back on it. There's some funny stuff. We talked about whatever, things that you're like, why would I mention that now? But let's time travel to that place a little bit. What state of mind were you in at that point in time, either personally or professionally?
I'll sum it into one word and then I'll elaborate. Excitement. At that point in time, we've done a lot of businesses individually and together. And developing this podcast is something you talked about for a while. So for me, it was honestly just an opportunity at that point in time to be on really my first podcast. So for me, like the state of mind that I'm in, I'm like, I've become a podcast listener and I have all these things. And suddenly I have language to associate with all these things I've done in my past. So I felt like an unlock in the term of, well, I now have a dictionary and I have the definitions to these things. But now I need to actually take what I've done in the past and what I know now and apply it into the future. So much excitement of like, what are the next couple years of thinking this way, of challenging myself this way, and being excited to step into new territory. At that point in time, it's like we were talking a lot more about marketing ourselves. I think for a long time, in building every business, if it was a wedding couple, if it was a music video client, if it was freelance, it was like, how do we serve them? How do we serve them? How do we make them an awesome experience? And at this time, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, what's the legacy I want to leave behind? I'm starting to think that way more. And I think I've thought that way a little bit, and how we've trained people and things like that. But I was really excited about like this next phase is about creating social proof. It's about sharing the ideas that have been around in my head. It's about giving back to our clients, to my community, connecting more and more. I didn't necessarily have a direction, but I did have, a purpose, a new purpose at that point in time. And since then, I'll just say like that was a transition from video is a service that we provide for others to video is a tool that I should be using myself. And I think that that's like in that phase, it's like I'm ingesting all this information, I'm learning all these things. And now how do I take this information and I apply it to my life? I start to make our clients' lives better. And then I start to go instead of one-to-one or, whatever to one-to-many. And like, how do I push this out there? And there was we had conversations about this. It's like, all right, we're going to do, the 15-minute Fridays. All right, we're going to do, our talking head content for JCP. All right, what does it look like for us to maybe think about doing our commercial video production company finally? So at this point in time, those podcasts we were listening to, your podcast, that period, it was the igniter of a new version of me, stepping into a new identity and, just trusting it and being like, all right, you've got your value out of being good at lighting, being good with the camera, being a great editor, but I don't think this is my purpose. I think my purpose is impact. I think I'm meant to impact my creative community. And it's like through video, I'm going to start putting myself out there. I'm going to start putting some bold statements out there. I'm going to start sharing some of the way that I think. And people are either going to hate it or they're going to love it. And I was so worried that people were going to call me a fraud or this or that. And the exact opposite happened. It's like, oh, wow, I've had the same idea. I can't believe this. And I started to really fall in love with social media again because I felt like there was a purpose and it wasn't likes or views, which was the headspace I was in for a long time. It suddenly became, wow, I'm able to create these really strong relationships online. And I'd had a sense of that before, but it just fueled the fire for that in a way that I'm like, I don't actually care about the likes or the views. What I really care about is the connection, the intention, whatever the case may be.
You're stealing my lines now. I say it all the time.
You say it all the time. I borrow from you. Me do have.
Hey, come on, save those.
I always mess it up.
I gotta have good one-liners to end this show with. So I asked this, this is going to sound funny, again, to people that are on the outside that are like, these guys talk almost every day. They're involved in each other's plans and business all the time and all this sort of stuff. But you've also learned that I don't know what's happening. Either I have a very selective memory of things that I really do and do not care about, or my memory is fading. There's a lot of stuff that I just don't remember that we did anymore. So
Clearly doesn't matter.
Going off of that, let's pretend for a second that I literally don't know. What's after that episode in 2019? What happens? Like, was it a deeper? Were we still diving into like music videos? Like, I know when I checked out in 2020, or at least like needed kind of the spark reignited sort of thing. Where's that path keep going? At the end of 2019, going into 2020. And then, of course, 2020 is a whole thing on its own that we'll get to. But
yeah. At the time, I was really challenging, like, my own thought process. Like at the time, JCP was our bread and butter. That made up 85% of our business. Preserve was making up about 15% of our business. And
Preserve was still around at that point in time?
Yeah.
Really? Oh, okay.
I didn't shut it down until 2020. And then I just reopened it again this year.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I thought it was before that. Anyway.
No, but it wasn't taking up a lot of our bandwidth or a lot of our focus. I was intentionally, that was like a year of 2. We only had 2 weddings that year, and that was the cap.
Yeah.
And then the next year I did 1, and I was like, that's going to be it. And then COVID hit, and I was like, great, this is my cop out.
My excuse.
But, at that point in time, music videos were our main focus. I wasn't freelancing a whole lot, and most of our work was coming from there. And I think we were doing some of our best work at that point in time, but I don't think we were going about it in a way that was sustainable or that we were excited. I think I was very on that track of how do we become more profitable? How do we make the numbers work this way? How do we streamline this? I was obsessed with figuring out our format. I read Profit First, and, not to make it about numbers, but it made me really think about how do we turn our services more into a product so that I can more confidently sell them. I can bring people in. So I was doing a lot of reading. I was trying to think about these things and also turn it into marketing so that way we could make a bigger impact, connect with people more. And we were both like, how do we phase out of the wedding stuff more and more? Obviously, COVID happened, and that slowed things down a lot. But in many ways, it revealed to me that we were extremely valuable. Like, oddly enough, COVID happened, all those things. A lot of people lost jobs. That's horrible. We're a few years out from this, but we were very lucky in the sense that as soon as everything shut down, we literally were booking out for like 3 months, and we had some of the most intense work. As soon as the doors opened, we were project. And it also uncovered a lot of value in us. I know I'm jumping all over the place. You can dive in anywhere, but the thing that I'm really grateful for in COVID that made me realize that our unique skills, for so long, the niching down thing of like you can only do one thing, real productions have multiple people, and there was this big divide between guerrilla filmmakers and the 20, 30, 40 person set projects. And suddenly when COVID happens and you need to operate with less than 10 people, it made us extremely valuable for the way that we had built our team for a long time. For a long time, I had this sense that I'm going to create 3-dimensional creatives, and I want them to be versatile. I want attitude first. Skills and gear is a secondary skill. As long as you have the right attitude and you're willing to come here and be a problem solver, we can wear multiple hats. We can be effective, and we can challenge the norm. And as soon as COVID happened, we became very popular because that's exactly how we had built our model. We didn't stay the one-man band, but we never evolved up into that 20, 30-person humongous productions. So we had this unique value that really, that excited me in a lot of ways. During COVID, it was like obviously a rough year, horrible for a lot of people, but it showed me that all these years I had been developing a skill that really no one else could do. And I was like, it made us the most shiny thing in the market for a long time, which gave us an incredible 2020 in comparison to most of our counterparts.
Right. Having that kind of like overly developed but overlooked skill set.
And then it just burnt you out too, so it really ruined you.
So 2 questions, and one of them involves that. One, and maybe this is not less of a question, more of a statement. We somehow found a way to have a lot of creative fun during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because that was the era where we were renting from the Serif office, and we had that space, And of course they weren't really using it. So we had this awesome space to go have pretty much free reign over. And I think that's when we really kicked into high gear with a lot of like the quote unquote content creation, focusing a lot on like those subject matters, the talking head pieces that I'm sure plenty of people have seen us post at these points.
Short films too.
Yes. And diving into short films, diving into skits, like it became this new thing where like I was able to bring you an idea for a simple skit of like, hey, what if I want to make a video game character selection screen of all these different versions of me and make fun of all the different things I do, but do it in a fun way, like a character selection screen. We had the space and the time and the creative energy to be able to look at that, and you were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And so you and I were planning these like mass content days where we would meet at 9, 10, 11 in the morning, and we would leave at 9, 10, 11 at night, having just this entire day of a space to ourselves. And we would knock out like 50 talking head pieces, 3 skits, 5 15-minute Fridays, photos for something. Like, we would do all of this stuff. And that was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like, that was a thing that we weren't doing, unless I'm misremembering. We weren't really doing that at the time we recorded
early in
our
career,
right?
But earlier in our career, like 2011 to 2015, I feel like we made time for stuff like that.
Less intentional,
Yeah.
though. It was more like, oh, we've got time. We happen to make something. Those days, those like content days, we went in with a strategy. It was like, all right, if we can get 5 of these, 10 of these, blah, 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 it's a good day. And like, we found this way to like just knock all of that stuff out. And I don't know if that was because everything else had slowed down enough that like, and we were busy with the work, like you were saying, but like looking back on that, like, was it because the world slowed down that we got to just sort of be like, oh, there's not as much going on, so I guess we can kind of focus our energy in on this and balance it out with whatever work we do have? Or was it just like a mental shift we were going through at that point in time? And I want to get to the me burnout thing.
Yeah.
But like, so you said it was both?
It was both. When we weren't legally allowed to do productions for paid, that's when we started kicking off all the content creation.
Because it was just me and you in a building by ourselves.
Yeah. We were allowed to do that, and I was like, we need to make the best of this. Like, well, I mean, we sat around, we had meetings. That's when we started implementing video meetings. We really started to go into the system. But I was already looking at, how do we market ourselves? I was looking in a lot of ways at like past sales jobs that I'd had, and I was like, the unfair advantage is like having a brick and mortar place. Like, by working in this establishment, they have the brick and mortar. I have 100 people who come and talk to me. So a lot of it was like, a lot of the problems that we need to solve is we need to increase our odds. We need to increase our opportunities. And the best way for us to do that is to put our minds and ourselves out there. So we went into content creation for, the business side with marketing JCP better, for marketing Bloom, for developing out some of those things a little bit more. But then inversely, it's like we got through that content so much quicker than we ever anticipated. And, we started shifting into the short film stuff, which was a conversation we were having more and more. This was leading up to you being more burnt out because the music video things weren't scratching your itch the same way as they were for me. And I think we uncovered a little bit of like, how do we infuse some of the things that are exciting for you, because I'm getting my itch scratched, but realizing that a director and a DP has different needs. One of my favorite things, and I just want to talk about this for a little bit in the day, and this is nerding out, and maybe no one will even care about this, but the 427 LR skit is literally, to this date, like one of my favorite things we ever made. And one of the reasons I love that so much is how innovative we were and how on the fly. It was an idea that I think you and Joey had like years ago, and you brought it up, and like it wasn't even on the plan for the day, but it's like we got done like 4 hours early, and I'm like, what if we just went ahead and shot this? And I just threw a lav mic on you. I popped it right into the red. We didn't have anything other than the gear that was in there. We used 2 lights. We sat you down, and the exercise was, what does it look like to shoot a proof of concept from this bigger idea in one location without you moving, and to tell the story. And that was one of my favorite creative exercises I had done in years. And that's kind of what really sparked it, is like, if we can make something that's this good with our synergy on this with such little effort. It was just 5 minutes of talking about it. I was like, let's do it. Here's an idea.
It's just me and you, and that was it.
And to this day, it's one of my favorite things we've made. Like, I love that. And at that period of time, it's like, I look back on that and I'm like, I'm so grateful for that slowdown that allowed us to have that creative bandwidth. And now I think we're looking for those excuses when and where we can, making it more of a creative exercise, more of a goal, or a like, how do we get to this a little bit easier?
Yeah. And I think in a fun way, I think it's fun to pull back the curtain right now. And you and I are recording this at the tail end of one of our new content days.
Yeah.
You and I have spent all day today filming and recording and doing a bunch of stuff just like we used to, because we realized that we got pretty far away from that, where we didn't have a lot of time together. And of course, we'll get there in the timeline talking about, current stuff. But we realized like, oh man, it's sometimes 3 months that we don't see each other if we're not on productions or whatever. Maybe we should go back to that old content day type of strategy and be around each other a couple times a month to work on stuff for ourselves, for our adjacent creative projects, whatever it may be. So yeah, that's honestly a fun full circle thing that we are sitting at the tail end of one of those exact days right now. But going back in the timeline, something that I love that we uncovered at that point in time is what it looked like when we had a space to create in.
Yeah.
It wasn't, we're renting, High HD to go and film a project for a client, or we're going on location for a client for a project, whatever. Having access to the Serif building and renting that from them, that was a big part of that game-changing ability to be able to go in and spend an entire day creating content. It's like, oh, this is what we can do when we have a space to go do it in, because that was the first space that we ever had.
What's really funny is I know why this came to be now. At the time, we were doing so many meetings. People might not care about this, but we were doing so many meetings, and you know how I am about feeling guilty going to a coffee shop or to a Panera or whatever and not purchasing, a $16 meal every single time in this economy. But, I started to look at the numbers, and I'm like, we're spending like $800 a month just going out to meetings with these people.
Just driving to different restaurants.
And we're driving all the time. Coordination becomes difficult. And I was like, we really need a centralized place. And I remember we got the studio space 2 months before COVID hit.
Oh, yeah, that did time out that way, didn't it? Yeah,
and what led to us creating all the content is like, we're still paying for rent and we're not in there. Yeah. So we switched gears from like, well, we can't have meetings, which was the main purpose we got it to. We should start producing the podcast in there, which I know was a part you were leaning towards.
Yeah, I guess that was a big thing that I was.
We started producing the podcast there. We started producing other content there. What actually led us to that was that it slowed down. We were still paying for rent. So we were like, we need to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, let's actually do something about this. Yeah, somehow you'd assume that I wouldn't forget that a big push for that original studio space was even me doing this podcast, because I also, we said it at the beginning of this episode, your first episode on this show was recorded in your kitchen at your house, and those first 10 episodes were like mixed with everyone in different places. I remember going to a public library for one. Are you good?
I'm good. Sorry, I'm coughing everybody.
Yeah, good. I'm just glad you coughed away from the mic. But I forgot that was even part of that push of like, oh my gosh, I'd love to have a space where I can actually just set up my podcast equipment. And now we get to actually sit in our own space here, not renting not sharing it with anybody, all that sort of stuff. And look at all the stuff that we're getting to make now. But I do want to talk about like the burnout thing. Yeah. Because like you said, shooting a lot of music videos at that point in time, we're getting through COVID, all that sort of stuff. And, I remember, I couldn't have been more fed up with music videos at that point in time, because just like you said, different itches are being scratched, and my itch for visual storytelling, I was over it. I didn't care to sit and be like, well, I've got this idea that would be cool about these people doing this thing. I guess the only outlet I have is to put it in B-roll of a music video. Like, I was so over that idea.
And to be honest, I was limiting you even on that, though. So efficiency, process, I'm the soft-spoken video. Mm-hmm. At that point in time, I had a talk with you because I was like, what's going to make you care about doing this music video? And you're like, can we do anything that's out of a studio? Like, I'm so sick and tired of like watering down, like, because I was really truthfully watering down a lot of our creative vision just to be more efficient with time, just to make the most of our artist dollars. And that was a project that I was like, let's just hemorrhage the budget. Let's go over. Let's reinvest. We're having a great 2020 in comparison to most people. I said, we're doing pretty well. I'm like, what do we need to do to make you love this video?
Yeah. Yeah, which in that set of soft-spoken videos were kind of it's like, oh, okay, cool. There's ways to make this suck less, and all right, great. There's some creative fulfillment that can happen with these music videos still. But it was because my mind was shifting of like, okay, I'm tired of only telling stories this way. I'm tired of everything being watered down, whether it was from you or just the budget at hand of the client or whatever. Like, all right, there's tons of stuff that I would rather be doing, and this is just not fulfilling me at all anymore. So outside of, yes, that one night at Seraph at the end of one of our days, we sat outside before getting into our cars and had that entire conversation of what would make you like these projects? What would make you, because I didn't even want to do them. I didn't want to be there. I was completely checked out because I was getting zero fulfillment from filming music videos at that point. And so we have that whole conversation of like, okay, what do we need to do to solve this? And like you said, all right, you know what? Let's just be as creative as we want to be with these. And still even sitting here now, spoilers, folks, I don't love music videos anymore still, but like it's, there wasn't like the hate that there was then. And I can look back and those are some of my favorite music videos that we ever made.
Yeah.
Because we really did engage in the creative side of like, all right, let's just have some fun. Maybe it's not the best business practice to take this as fun as we want, but let's just do it. So there's at least proof that it can be done of like, oh, this stuff can be still creatively fulfilling. My question for you, and I want it to be outside of the realm of, oh, well, I just knew you needed different storytelling muscles. What is going through your mind when I think I can safely say the only other person on this journey with you doesn't care to be on that journey anymore? What's your state of mind at that point in time?
I mean, it was very concerning, and I take the leadership thing really seriously. You're my best friend. I've worked with you for a long time, and I've built not only beautiful projects, but I've built beautiful memories. And for me, making music videos, shooting commercials, shooting short films, the product, the end thing has never mattered that much to me, but it's the memories, it's the energy, it's the working together. That's really important to me with you and I, with any of our crew, with our clients. It's this people thing for me. So when I hear someone say, they're upset or they're disappointed or they're not feeling fulfilled with this, I go into problem solver mode, not to be like, how do I control you as an employee, but like, how do I be a friend? How do I hear you? How do I maybe help you work through some of these emotions? How do we problem solve this together? And I can remember not only that night outside of Seraph, but I can remember the 6-hour night, the phone call that we had around the same time, shortly after Soft Spoken. And we started to even therapize me a little bit. And we started to uncover what my experience with shooting short films was, my hesitation when having you act and direct in short films. Because ultimately you expressed to me as like, I want to see these exist beyond a music video. I want to be more creative. I want to know that these exist further, because so often we're limited by the budget. I think if we had bigger budgets on music videos, which also became a problem I started to actively solve towards the tail end of 2020, is like, how do I raise our value? But we had a 6-hour long conversation and we uncovered why I am so hesitant about short films, which was so much of like I would end up acting, or we get a project 70% done, it wouldn't be complete.
And this is back in the day, to clarify, back when you were really starting
this is
your
like
video journey.
Pre-2011,
Yeah.
I used to do short films and skits, and obviously I'm a different person then, and you helped me realize that. But so much of what you were talking about is like, I don't want to just direct. I want to act in things. Like, that would be interesting to me. And when I heard that, it scared me. And I couldn't honestly articulate right away, but I started talking to you about like, I did this project with the guys back in the day, and it went this way, and I'm really concerned about that. And you weren't like, well, it's not going to be like that. You were just kind of like, okay, well, what can I do? It was very much a conversation back and forth to make sure both of our needs were met. I remember, one thing that I shared with you is like, listen, I don't compromise. And I think I make you compromise too much. And I started to give you permission to challenge me. I said, so often on set, I'll ask you, hey, do you like this? And you're very decisive. You're just like, it's good enough. That's fine. We can move on. My level of excellence is beyond that. And often I'll be like, well, I'm going to tinker a little bit because I can make this 5% better in under 5 minutes. And I don't compromise in that way. But I think for so often, the push from me was like, we got to keep it moving. And you almost became so time focused because that's the role I'd put you in as a director, the art director, and the assistant director. You know, those are 3 different responsibilities. People who don't know, the director is in charge of the vision, art director helps execute and make that vision possible, and the assistant director beats everyone to death about time. So it's hard to be creatively fulfilled and manage time on the day. So I think so often you were limiting your own creativity. And I was like, I want you to get to the level that you want, even if that means compromising time, because I want you to be fulfilled on set, whether it's a music video, whether it's a short film. And that was a big conversation that we talked about. Going into short films, I said, it's going to be like we're starting over. And we even talked about the mentality that I felt like I needed us to get into, which is I need you to prove it to me that we can do this thing. Because right now, I have failure from 2010, 2011, which is what ultimately led me to say, I'm never going to do a short film again. I'm going to go do music videos. I'm going to go do weddings. I'm going to go do anything that's profitable because this thing over here was a waste of time, and it scares me because I equate that to a distraction and not being successful. Whereas now, we're in a totally different mindset. It's like, how do we do what we've done in all these other industries, build upon what we know, and we make a beautiful experience for short films and cultivating people together for that in this day and age. But it started with that conversation and helping to get you in the place of like, what's going to make you happy was what I kept asking you. You know, like at the time you were talking about potentially moving away and just starting over. And I'm just
that
like,
was that conversation. I forgot about that.
And that scared me because it's like, you know, I don't want you to give up on this creativity thing, but more importantly, like I don't want you to be unhappy. And as a leader, I want to make sure that I'm providing an experience that you can have fulfillment from too. And that's not just you, anyone on our team. It's like, I value their feedback until they give me something critical, and then I tell them, go away.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, wait, you disagreed with the thing that I liked? That was, no. Feedback, no. Negative feedback? Oh, no.
I just want praise.
Absolutely not. Give me some feedback as long as it's good, please. Yeah, if anybody knows anything, that's how you've been for a long time. Absolutely. What is it that, because, you know, now that I'm even, you know, literally, I said this was going to happen. I'm now literally being refreshed on that time frame. And I think that like something that maybe that was a turning point of, or something where maybe light started to get shed on that. Now I think we're way better at identifying and can almost in positive ways butt heads about things, even though we really don't, but we find good ways to figure those things out. Is it accurate for me to say that at that point in time, even though neither of us really knew how to totally explain it or navigate it necessarily, was that maybe the first time that there was an example of what you want in life and what I want in life might actually be different?
Yeah.
Because I would say from the moment we started working together up until that point, it was just like, heck yeah, we're both creating. We both want to create the same things. Man, we talked in Wendy's that one day for 6 hours. We want the same stuff. But obviously as time goes on, wants and needs and interests change, and what fulfills me is different than what fulfills you. Even sitting here today, there are things that fulfill you in different ways than fulfill me. But now we can sit and notice those and address those and be like, oh yeah, that's just how it is. But I think back then, maybe that was feeling like such a drastic thing because it was the first time we had an example of that.
Yeah.
Ross doesn't want to shoot music videos anymore. He wants to shoot short films. Josh is, for lack of a better term, afraid of shooting short films and really likes this music video thing that's starting to work really well. Yeah. So it's like, what the hell is going on? So even being able to navigate that, I feel like that was maybe the first example of that starting to show up of like, wait, you don't have to want the exact same things.
There's more to this though. So I started to feel a little guilty, and I don't remember if you remember this part of the conversation, but at this point in time, I felt like I had a gift to give you, and I wanted to go about it subtly and not forcefully. But at this point in time, you know, you had spent what I did from 2011 until 2018, which was, I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to be so focused. I'm going to grind so hard. And, you know, I had a mentality of like, no one will ever outwork me. Mm-hmm. And then in 2019, you know, like I had Locke in 2017. We have Knox now. And, you know, me and my wife, we went through ups and downs in our marriage, and we've continued to go through those things. But for me, I started to work less. I started to say, these are going to be my hours. I stopped working as hard as you were. And I think there was some friction in our relationship leading up to this of like, well, I'm still after my career. I'm still after this thing. And I think 2020 forced you to slow down in a way and to reevaluate these things, but to realize I've worked so hard and I'm still not happy. And, in 2019, 2018, I started to really change from I'm going after being the hardest worker, proving to everyone that I'm worthwhile, proving to everyone that I'm talented, to I want to be happy. And when I started to love myself and like myself again, I started to realize, oh, I actually hated myself for 7 years. Am I saying that that's invaluable, that time wasn't valuable? Absolutely not. I would never wish that away. But what I did was I sacrificed all of my happiness, all of my health in the pursuit of a creative career to be a starving artist for a long time. Mm-hmm. That's really what I did. And I feel like you weren't necessarily a starving artist at this point, but you were definitely a frustrated, burnout artist, and you didn't know what that was. And I just wanted to say, I remember I'm like, I feel like I've relaxed a lot. I give myself time off. I started, putting my phone in the office over the weekend, just not responding. And I'd tell you this, I'd be like, listen, you're not going to be able to get a hold of me because I want to spend time with my family. And I feel like you didn't have those same things and you weren't giving yourself the permission to enjoy life in that way. So then I started to have conversations, not only about us doing short films and stuff, but I'm like, I think you need to give yourself some permission to relax and you need to find some hobbies, because that's what I had to do to rediscover myself, to see how unhappy I was. And I've seen you make so many ripple effects and changes in your life since then. It's simple and silly as it is. For a long time, every time you'd play video games, you'd text me and you'd be like, I just played video games with the guys. It felt so good to not have to focus on this. There were so many small things that you would do that way. You started to actually collect more art. You started to actually, go to like the horror conventions and stuff like that. Yeah. It wasn't all for this career. And I think that was the best part about 2020. And it strengthened our relationship because I finally felt like I've been here before. I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to give you the gift of giving yourself permission to relax a little bit, to think about what your needs are, and to love yourself a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And so I'm literally trying to remember, what comes after that? So we have that conversation in 2020.
We did all the shorts in 2020. That ended up being a really big goal for us in October. Literally.
Was that the first year we did kind of the Halloween or the October kind of takeover?
Yeah. And that was because we were still at Seraph. We had the studio in there. We built all the stuff in there. We built all the sets and things. We had kind of a collection of people that weren't busy, that wanted to do things. So we used those short films to kind of strengthen our network as one angle, but two, also to prove to people that we had other skills.
Yeah.
And what ended up being really disappointing but really valuable, at least for me, was when we started putting out all the short films, seeing how people didn't care about them that much that first year.
Super confused. So what is
people were super confused.
Whose art is this that you're sharing?
So we stepped into a new identity, and it became valuable in the sense is like we hadn't set up the stage for that. This is who we are. So we started to own that more and more and more. And I remember one project in particular, the alien one that we did, the really simple one.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed. This was me coming back to views and numbers. I remember it only got 22 views, and I was so proud of it. I was so excited. And I put so much weight in the fact of I almost deleted it because I was so disappointed. And I was like, I don't want to be the music video guy. However, this is a valuable lesson for social media and understanding. Of those 22 views, we had an artist reach out to us and they said, hey, I saw this. And then I also went and I watched the behind the scenes of it and realized you made a hallway look like this. How do we work with you? That ended up being one of the biggest budgets we ever landed. And we landed that by betting on ourselves and making something that we wanted to make. Mm-hmm. Did it get thousands of viral views? Absolutely not. But it did open up an opportunity, and it really strengthened the relationship because going into that project, that client was so open about we want you to lead the way. We want you to do this.
Trusted.
And it was just wow, this is a different outcome, a different opportunity that I didn't even anticipate. Just by betting on myself, trying something different, challenging myself to evolve into a new identity, into a new person, really build upon the identity that already exists.
Right.
But, that was a really big win for that year of making the shorts, planning those out. And, one of my favorite moments of that year, again, was us sitting on your balcony and coming up with the 5 short film ideas.
Yeah.
And for me,
oh man, that was such a cool. Oh, that was so fun.
A big hurdle for me was not realizing my value. When it comes to music videos, I'm damn near militant about how people should perform and what they should look like on camera and executing the team and making sure all those things work. Stepping into the short films, I wasn't sure how I was going to add value to you because I don't write any stories, full transparency in the music video process. So often we help make someone else's idea possible. So you have all these ideas and I'm like, well, I can't help you write. I can't help you come up with this. So I didn't know my place. But then that was one day where you're like, I have this idea. And then I'm like, oh, we could do it here. We could do it this way. Here's one way around this. And I realized I was able to provide an A, B, and C option to make these things possible. And it made me realize this is how we can actually work together to make these narrative things possible. And we've only gotten better at that over the years. I can't wait to see what 5 years of doing that is going to really achieve.
Yeah. When that was the turning point, was like, okay, we can put all this energy and conversation and ideation into these client projects. So what happens if we just sit down and hey, I just need you to sit and just listen to my ideas, because I know as soon as I tell you them, I know what part of your brain is going to kick in, and then you're going to problem solve it for me of well, this is how we execute it. And I'm like, would have never thought about it like that. I just had the idea I wanted to make.
I mean, the Halloween one, is I can't find the right house. I can't have it the right way. And I'm like, I know where there's some extra flooring. I can bring flooring up. We can build the floor and make it look like this in the Serif office, and we'll make a fake wall this way. And you're like, we can do that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have all this construction background. And we bring Zach in and he lines everything up. He has all the props. It came together.
So much fun. Yeah. That was
the 2020 shorts. That was a whole different energy.
Yeah, those were super fun. Yeah, folks, go to my YouTube. I mean, if you're watching this, you're already on my YouTube channel. If you're listening,
just click to the shorts.
Go to the YouTube channel. Go to the Room 228 playlist. Seek out that Halloween 3 skit. It's super short, but we built an entire living room to film it. But yeah, that was definitely a turning point of understanding what that process looked like. And I think it's weird because that was the weird disconnect, was I was so ready to push into what that process was, but you had to figure out, okay, what is my place in this? What does this process actually look like? But then, like you said, as soon as we establish that, then it's okay, cool. We're just going to make bigger and better things, which we obviously did. So 2021, what happens in 2021? I'm asking half because I literally don't remember, and also the other half for this episode.
After we got done with the shorts in 2020, one of the things that I was looking at and I was talking with you about was, all right, we had a pretty good 2020. Profit margin wise, we didn't do that great, and we also got negotiated down a lot that year in terms of what if this was cheaper, what if that was cheaper? And I started to ask the question of our value is not being communicated. And the constant thing we keep hearing on set is, wow, we see why your prices were this. Even though we got a discount now, we're not going to pay you that additional money. We understand now that we've been on set. So I started to say, how do we start to nail down getting that pre-production, getting that value early on? And I started to really lean into that systems and process, because I said on set, our system and process for producing music videos is pretty high level. We're making 3-4 music videos in a day these days now because we're so streamlined. We've had that skill for a long time, but we weren't communicating our value in our proposals. We weren't communicating our value on our early calls. So at the tail end of 2020, I remember, I developed our new proposal system, and I started, this really led from me looking at budgeting differently and saying, I want to bring more people into our ecosystem. As a leader, I'm so grateful, 2020, we had to scale back. I'm so grateful we have these core 5 people, 6, 7 people that we cycle through all the time. But there are so many other people that are reaching out to us that want to work with us. And the only way I increase that opportunity, I bring more people on our sets, is I figure out how to generate more money, to generate more value, to give more opportunities to people. Because at the end of the day, I'm really passionate about that. Filmmaking is a team sport. It's a difficult thing to get into. And I love giving people the gift of getting on set. So tail end of 2020, I develop out our new proposal system on the website and lay it all out. I remember I present to you our first 2 proposals that we're going to do. And the prices are bonkers, and you're like, no one's ever going to sign on this. What happens? The first 6 proposals we write with this at this higher value, they all sign on this. And guess what? We didn't trick anyone into paying any more money. We started communicating our value better. And the biggest thing that I think we do really well is we give this great personalized experience. I started to infuse that into our pre-production process. How do we make this proposal so personal, so exceptional that people understand we're going to value you every step of the way? And I think there was a limiting belief in your head and in mine of like, no one's ever going to pay this amount of money. And as soon as someone did, it started to really give us this new fuel for like, oh, wow, this is exciting. Inversely, we're still in 2020. I'll get into 2021. 2020 was also when we started to talk about making the commercial business happen. Mm-hmm. So didn't have a name at the time. It had an old name that was attached to it that we were like, definitely not going to name it that. Then we had a secondary name for it that we totally changed until we landed on Mylan, which we use to this day. In any business that I've kind of been involved in, it usually hasn't had a name for like the first couple years of making it because I get really obsessed on who do we work for? How do we do that work? But we started to say we would like to be in the commercial space because that might scratch a creative itch. And we just focused on 2020 of like, could we get a couple of clients, a couple of things? We did like one project. We did 2 projects, both of which were just passion projects. It'd be like, we want to have something that's kind of our style to it. And going into 2021 with this new proposal system in JCP, it was really led by the commercial side. We had the website, we didn't even have a name. And I was like, the one thing we're going to build is we're going to build this proposal system. And I'm just going to make sure I filter people through this. We don't have any work to show. We don't have any portfolio. Yes, we both freelance, but we can't ethically use these other people's work. Nor did we want to use it because we had a different style that we wanted. We were like, these boring corporate films could be a lot cooler. So I think the tail end of 2020 was like really executing on let's dabble around with a commercial business in 2021. Let's give it a shot. We'll give it I think I even said like 10% of our energy. JCP will still make up the majority of it. I think I even set a goal. It was like 14 grand. I was like, if we generate 14 grand, a couple of projects, we get 2 clients, 14 grand, that'll be a win. That first year we generated 60K just by using that proposal system, by communicating our value, by nailing down our discovery call process. And that was really led by, how do I get projects? How do I take you a little bit more out of the system so that you can come and do the thing that you're really great at, which is just directing? Because you weren't loving being a part of the treatments and all the calls and things like that. You were just like, hey, I love doing the work. I love when you find the good client. You clearly love doing like the sales side of stuff. Bring me into direct. So that was a big focus going in. And I was like, okay, I want to fall in love with this, make this part really good, and bring you into your creative genius, the thing that you're great at, so that I'm not burning you out with like 60% of the process that like you're beating your head against the wall because it's not what you want to do. Right. But then if I put you in the 20% of the process that you thrive in, then it's like, cool, yeah, I'll come do these things and it'll be enjoyable. I still have you there for the thing I need you the most for, and we can both be fulfilled in that. So going into 2021, I mean, it was a lot of, I feel like that was the year of truly turning video for me into a sales tool, and also starting to focus more on how do we make more time for creative projects. Because that was also the year that we did AirPods, and that was our really big push for the year.
Yeah. Is 2021 the car ride?
Yeah.
Is that when that was?
No, actually. It was 2020.
We went to New York in 2020?
It's tail end, I believe. We did. Okay. We did that project like over the summer in 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had a 6-hour long car ride. I feel like I helped you, and I talked you through it, and you were like, "Well, this is me helping you now." And
yeah, we got to kind of flip roles a little bit, and just to because there's a larger point that I want to get at, which is why I brought this up. So yeah, you and we take a car ride. We're going to work with our friend Josiah over in New York, and we have 6 hours in the car. Well, you and I, any amount of time in the car, an hour plus, we're usually changing a life in some way. We're coming up with a bunch of ideas. We've done that for years. That was always the excitement of getting to travel to a project or something, was our time in the car. We would just sit and just brainstorm and spitball ideas and problem solve and all this sort of stuff. So on this particular car ride, we start talking about, making money with the business and clients and fulfillment and all this sort of stuff. Because it's like, all right, cool. I've gotten to uncover what my larger focus is, at least at that point in time, was, all right, I want to story tell, but I want to do it in these ways. I want to actually act. I want to do podcasting. I want to I'm starting to open up my doors and avenues to all these other things I want to do, which in turn is why the process of our productions becomes, cool, come in and direct and help out where you can help out, everything else off your plate, because I didn't want it on my plate anymore, right? So cool, you helped me identify that. So one of those big things of that car ride was me helping you just identify your skill in general and also your value that comes with those skills. And so we have this entire car ride, nearly probably the entire thing. Was it coming home, I think?
I think it was coming home on the way out. I don't know.
Whatever it was. We have this entire conversation where I kind of reaffirm your ability to help other people with their productions, because it's been years and years of focusing on our things and music videos and our clients and all this sort of stuff, which is great, but that can also cause sometimes a lot of gaps in income, a lot of gaps in work, which then brings energy down, which brings it all down, and it's like, oh my gosh, what the heck am I doing? And I feel like there was some reason that we had that conversation. So I feel like that must have been
it was 2021 because this incubated the idea of cutting down my freelance clients and focusing on the certain ones. It was 2021. Okay.
Because there was something that spawned the reason that I would even bring this up, because it clearly wasn't like, we need more music video clients. Well, you know what you should do instead? Freelance. So that was the thing, right? I bring up freelancing a lot more to you of listen, I'm going out and I'm regardless, that was my confident part of me starting to poke through, where it's listen, you help me uncover the things that I really like to do. I'm going to go do those on my own regardless. So my point was, I think it's valuable for you to find those other things that you can individually do, that individually empower you, and of course help you support income and support family and all this sort of stuff. You need to be able to identify, you have this skill set, you have these larger values, and they can be put to use outside of just things for us.
Yeah.
And luckily, that entire conversation was a super fun conversation. I distinctly remember you sitting and kind of realizing all these things. And it was probably in you somewhere, but actually digging it up and uncovering it, you're sitting and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, I guess I kind of needed to hear that. I didn't really think about doing that in that way. And it was simple stuff that now you and I can tell everybody to do every single time we sit down to coach somebody or something, right? Yeah. It was simple things. I remember sitting and helping you craft a list of who are people that you'd want to freelance for? What are entities you'd want to freelance for? Agencies, individuals, whatever. Make a list and literally next week hit them up.
Yeah.
And I was confident in the fact that if Josh Emerick hits up these people who know Josh Emerick's value, they're going to be shocked that, oh my gosh, he wants to work with me. Absolutely, I'm going to take that opportunity.
Yeah.
And what happened? A week later, it didn't work at all, and you've been living here in our studio ever since. You reached out to those handful of people, and yeah, you didn't get $1 million in a week, but unless I'm misremembering, I remember you telling me, I have 3 jobs booked next week. Yeah. Just from establishing that, taking action, and making those connector points of reminding people, hey, you've been seeing me gain and build all these skills over the last few years. I've been using them in all my different creative ways for all my different creative endeavors. But hey, you can put them to use too. And I'm willing to come work on your productions and lend a hand to you and bring these skills to your sets. And it opened up, and just having that conversation with people finally made people be like, oh, wait, yes, I do want Josh Emerick to come freelance on my set.
Yeah.
And in turn, whether you've loved it the entire time, whether there's been ups and downs or whatever, it did open up this new avenue of stuff you were able to do.
Yeah.
And now sitting here today, you freelance a lot. And I would vastly say we have, again, we're not sitting here millionaires, but we have different types of conversation when it comes to income about all of this than we did in 2016, 2017.
For sure.
And not that that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
But that is a benefit of just taking that chance and taking that shot of, you know what, I do have this value in this skill set that is incredibly valuable. So maybe I can offer it to other people and hopefully they see the value in return. And it was fun to see it work.
Yeah, and one of the things that was more than hey, just go freelance, because I'd done that in past years, and I'd been frustrated. I never really liked the whole freelance side of things. As a business owner, I feel creatively empowered being able to support artists and make these campaigns and add this value in this way. The same thing goes for like when we started with Mylan and doing the work. Like there's something so creatively empowering in that. But I've always seen 3 lanes. There's Josh the freelancer, there's Josh the video production partner, and there's Josh the creative partner. And those have 3 different energies. You know, they take different efforts. And a lot of what we talked about in that car ride was how I started to position that, why I would want to position it that way, and what's the bigger impact. Like a part of it was like, listen, like I want to work with you. I want more people to understand the value of you on sets, or to bring my people in more jobs, because, you know, we're pretty conservative about the way that we do things with JCP and Mylan. And like we pride ourselves on being really nimble. Every once in a while we'll take a big like job that'll be like 10, 14 plus crew, but most times it's pretty small and nimble. And I want to feed people. There are a lot of great creatives I know that I want to put them on set because they do fantastic work. So, you know, for me, it's like the thing that felt the most empowering was realizing I do have a say in the way that things get done. And what I do best for our clients is ask good questions. Instead of being the button pusher or the doer of requests, I wanted to go back into freelancing with, here's my values, here's why you hire me for a job, and here's how I press that the most. I'll use Mark Pasternak as the prime example. You know, we had worked together years ago. I think it was like 2016, and he's one of the people that I reconnected with because of Ambitious Filmmaker. But also we started to talk a little bit more than just like his podcast of like, what do you really want in your business? How do I start to open up some of those doors for you? How do I start to deepen our friendship? And it started to help him see things differently. He's a fantastic director and messenger. He's great at getting messages across. He's good at understanding what the value of his client's message is. And I love that. But I felt that he was limiting his creative potential. And I wanted to show him a version of what does it look like to bring me into the equation and to challenge his thinking on what video production is. I know at the first, I got the cameras, you just show up, you do the thing, and like, that's fine. I'm like, let me bring my thing here, because I think that by bringing you a red camera and a director's monitor, I can actually create more confidence for you and your client, and you can get back to being maybe the business owner and selling more jobs and be more fulfilled in this. And, you know, I'm speaking for him a little bit, but the biggest pushback was like, oh, I don't want it to take forever, and I don't want all this stuff. And I'm like, well, no, I don't either. I'm actually really fast at this. So it's like we get in there and we get a red camera set up. You were on that job, the monitor, the lights and everything. And we had that all set up in under 10 minutes. And he's like, I didn't know we could do this at this level this fast. So it's challenging that belief of big production takes a long time. Instead of being like, as a creative technician, being like, I need all the lights and all the things and all the da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I like making beautiful images, but I don't like taking forever to do it. I like being fast. And I see that as a value prop for myself. And additionally, I'm obsessed with accuracy. By you being able to see things in real time, you can say, Josh, your shot sucks, do a better job. Or you can say, most people say that all the time. Or you can say, wow, this is exactly what I want. What if we also did this? What if we also did this? Mm-hmm. So it creates new creative opportunities. And I saw this from doing the work for so many years for our clients and being like, I'm not seeing these same things being done on production and still valuing time. So any one of these relationships that I built in late 2021 leading into 2022, I really doubled down on what does this experience look like for you? What do you want your experience for your client to be? And then inversely, what does this project mean to you? Which is the same questions I would ask our band clients and our commercial clients. So I'm like, why can't I apply that same thinking to freelance? Mm-hmm. And what opportunity does that do? Well, I guarantee you that like with any of the people I work with, they respect my value, they respect my time, they respect my thinking. And, you know, The Go-Giver, fantastic book. One of the principles is like your compensation is a direct reflection of the way in which you solve your problems. Probably butchering that a little bit, but reading that book this past year, I was like, this is literally what I've done for the last decade. Mm-hmm. Is I've communicated my value through and through, and every single time I've communicated my value better, there has been no debate of what my value is. there has been way less resistance in raising or increasing my day rate or negotiating projects in a way that's a win for both parties. It's not all about just getting paid the most money or anything like that, but it's about being respected in that process. Like, I've done jobs for free that I've been completely respected in. I think about my relationship with Elevate Creative. That came about because I'm working on an OHD project. Scott says, hey, we're doing a bolt project. I know you're interested in doing a bolt project. Let's just connect the dots here for a second. So, Scott's like, hey, you want to come play around with the bolt? I know you said you want to sell this, but you're feeling unconfident in how to go about it. Here's a good learning. You want to come play around for free. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. That sounds fun. I'm going there selfishly for myself at first of like, I really want to pay attention to how the project's managed, how long things take. I want to pick David's, brain as he goes about things. First thing, I walk one set and Mitch Hoover's there and he's like, oh, hey, Josh Emerick, I'm a big fan of your lighting and I love your work. I feel so guilty because I don't know who Mitch is and he knows me. And I'm like, well, that makes me feel great. Thank you. And then Louise ends up showing up there later and he's like, yeah, this is Mitch, the one that I was telling you about that I had on the podcast. And we talked about you a little bit and stuff. So I'm like, other people are speaking my name and know who I am. And I have some layer of influence, but I'm also walking on set kind of selfishly for myself. And I end up making a great connection with Mitch. And, I'm showing up there on day 2 and I'm just like, I'm just trying to stay out of the way. And Mitch keeps asking me what do you think about this? And then David's pulling me over and was like, oh, Josh is really good with color theory and stuff so my value ends up getting to be there and I get to do so much more on that project than what I even anticipated. And then furthermore, me and Mitch continue to have conversations after that and I nurture that relationship. Then when I'm working with Elevate Creative, it's the same thing. It's I have a certain day rate in mind that they weren't you're like, oh, yeah, we can do that or that. And I said, you know what? Let's just start off really safe. Let's build a relationship. Let's make sure you guys like the way that I do things. And we just nurture that relationship over time. And outside of rates or anything like that, what I've loved the most by taking a new approach of not just putting myself out there as a freelancer, but asking the right questions, slowing other people down, and helping them see the value and thinking more holistically about things, it makes everyone better. And then when I bring people from my ecosystem or I bring people from their ecosystem into working with me, it makes everyone better in the process. And that's what I've become obsessed with. And you gave me the permission for that on that car ride. If we didn't have that 6-hour car ride, I don't know that I would. I am so happy with the project I've done with Seraph in 2022. I love the projects that we've done with Elevate Creative. I've done some cool stuff with so many different people. And that's all because of just embracing, I have this skill and I'm honestly doing a huge disservice by not giving that gift to other people and finding ways for me to feel fulfilled in the process too, because my perspective on freelance is, hey, here's my day rate. I'll do the thing. And it's like this line item. And I'm like, no, my value is this. And at this value, I solve problems this way. So if you're thinking about hiring me, think about if this is a Josh Emerick job, not a DP job, not a producer job. Does Josh Emerick solve the problem at hand here?
Yeah. So we're starting to kind of catch up timeline a little bit. Sure, there's plenty of details, all that sort of stuff. But I feel like a lot of, up to this point, this has been the video production story of Josh Emerick. Let's talk about actual Josh Emerick. Again, I know tons of stuff that have happened, how we've each grown in this and all this sort of stuff. But I feel like we keep emphasizing, and of course, why not? It's a huge portion of life, is the business and the creative and video production. And we're leaving all these, awesome nuggets and all this sort of stuff. I feel like we've done 8 50-minute Fridays in this episode. But I want to shift gears a little bit into how has Josh Emerick grown and changed as an individual human being since we last had that last conversation in 2019. So I'm going to start that by saying, what do you feel like the biggest thing that you've discovered about yourself since we had that last conversation has been?
I mean, man, the biggest thing in my life, and I'm on a high point on this right now, is I'm just going to say, me and my wife are more in love than I've ever been in my entire life. We talk about this pretty often. This is such a shift of gears. I promise I'll make some relevance to this. But, constantly, me and her have conversations either about the kiddos or about ourselves. It's who would have guessed that, over 15 years, we'd somehow fall in love with each other or, still be so attracted to each other in such a different way than what we ever thought. And for me, that's so important, because if I look at my whole career or my personal life, she's been the person that's been a constant for a long time. She's seen so many different versions of me. I've seen so many different versions of her. And, a big shift that we went through was in 2021, we had our second son, Knox. And, in 2020, I turned down a lot of jobs freelancing, and we had a different conversation, because for the longest time, full transparency, everybody, for years, I wasn't making all the bills. I was definitely passion driven. I love doing creative work. And when I would come up short on my half the bills, my wife was very financially responsible. And that led to a lot of insecurity for me, and even chasing a creative career, to doing any of these things, and oftentimes wanting to quit because I just saw myself as a joke. In 2020, I turned down, I think it was $36,000 worth of work in freelance, simply because I was at home watching Locke, taking care of him. We were falling more and more in love in 2020. 2020 was a wonderful year for us, because we connected on such a deep level, and we felt so close to each other that it was we really want to have a second child. Locke would make such a good big brother. We always planned on having one kid. We're no, I think we want to have two. I've never been more in love in my life. We have Knox. And leading up to that, looking at the numbers side of things, we kind of had a conversation about what would it have looked like? Because if I had that $36,000 from these few opportunities that I turned down, you wouldn't have to have a job. That would be the biggest difference. And it was applying that data, and then us starting to work a plan for what does it look like for you to stay at home? Because when we had Locke, I stayed at home, and this was really the incubator for me of starting to love myself, because fatherhood made me look at life so differently. And I know I'm backing up now, but I fell so in love with being a father. That's really important to me. That's what shifted me from I don't want to work 80 hours a week to how do I get to working 20, because I want to be around for him. That shifted from, okay, I'm not taking very good care of myself. I don't exercise ever. I don't ever, eat that well. I don't eat bad, but I don't eat well. I gained a lot of weight up until that point. I'm I don't want to have a heart attack and die. I want to start taking care of myself, because I want to be here for my son. I love being a father, and I could be a better husband. And then, from 2017, a big goal of mine, is how do I strengthen my relationship with my wife? Because I firmly believe the stronger our relationship is, the better husband and the better mother and the better family life. So all these things are happening from 2017 to 2021 when we have Knox. When we have Knox, it's I want her to have the same experience I had. I got to spend so much time at home. I was basically a stay-at-home father. I'd work every once in a while, probably 6 days a month, So I'm at home getting all this experience with Knox. And the biggest goal I have, or with Locke, the biggest goal that I have for having Knox is, how do I give my wife the same gift? And that was a lot of communication. That was a lot of talking about what that is. And you have to consider the fact that my wife has worked since she's 16 years old. So for the 15 years of marriage, the 13 years of marriage at that point in time, she has been the sole provider, the main financial, we've obviously worked together, but so much of her identity and her value comes from providing for our family. And now she's shifting to stay-at-home mother. She has to deal with all of the pressure, and we have to have so many conversations around I love you for the fact that you're getting to do all these things. I want you to have to do these things. You still add all this value, because now my schedule's open to be able to take on these jobs. And I'm still obsessed with not working 80 hours a week. So we went through a hiccup again, having kiddo number 2. Anyone who has kids, I think, can relate to the difficulties in any kind of romantic relationship. But now we're back to a place of we got through that early hurdle of having Knox, and dealing with, it wasn't even having, Knox that was a big challenge. There was all of these other challenges around what is my value now that I don't work? How do I provide for the family? What does our dynamic look like? Learning how to balance and manage our time and schedules, and where she gets that purpose from. So I feel I got to become a different kind of partner, and we've got to mature in so many different ways and have such interesting conversations of I love you for so many different reasons. And I feel it's taken a lot of time for us to get to that point. It's taken us a lot of time to develop that maturity to have those kind of conversations. But the consistent thing for me is like we've both been willing to put in the work. We've had tough moments, but she's been committed to me. I've been committed to her, even when we butt heads. You know, this day and age, it's like when we argue, now we're so much celebrating the way that we argue. It's like we'll have an argument, and later at night we'll be like, can you imagine how we would have dealt with that 6 years ago? Oh, it would have went like this. It would have went like this. So it's calling out those growth moments that's been really exciting for me. And you know, like I am making exercise a bigger priority. During 2020, one of my favorite things was like, you know, while Jess is at work, she worked in healthcare. Every day, me and Locke, we had this stroller with big wheels, and I got into jogging and walking. And, you know, for me, I was like, I just got to find something to do. I need some sunshine. Like, I found my greatest creative ideas. The way I started, you know, everything that happened with our proposal system and stuff, that's because I was taking walks with my son. And instead of feeling like I had to work long hours, I was like, you know what? What's it look like to take a 1.5 hour long break, go play down at the playground with my son, go for a walk, get some sun, like just connect with him, or go play outside for half the day. So many great ideas, so many things that would recharge me. So now when I'm looking at things, you know, like earlier this week, you know, I'm starting a new routine of getting back up early again. I was telling you earlier, it's like, you know, the most productive day I had this week was the day that Jess woke up early with me. We sat around, we had coffee for 2 hours before the kiddos got up. And guess what? I went into the office, I worked 4 hours that day, and I got more done in that day than I did the days that I put in 6-8 hours. So it's like realizing that it's not about just working through things, really difficult things, but it's sometimes giving yourself the permission to do the things that you love, spend time with the people that you love, and what are the outcomes? What are the compound interest of investing in yourself in those ways instead of in the ways that we think make the most logical sense. Sometimes it's feeding that emotional side because that emotional side is what needs fed.
Mm-hmm. What has been the most difficult thing that you've worked through in the last 3 years?
I'm going to get vulnerable for a second. I'm going to try not to cry. I'm not going to make any promises. But when we had Knox, we were at a really healthy place in our relationship leading up to that. And postpartum depression was really tough for Jess. It's not at all what we saw coming. And, you know, I think some of the emotional things, but also like some of the chemical imbalance things, and just dealing with the heaviness of that situation, and hearing the person that you love more than anything, that you made this decision with, saying that, you know, like, I'm unlovable, I can't be loved, you know, and I don't want to exist anymore, and feeling utterly helpless. I can remember just, you know, literally pleading to her, is like, I will do anything to get you back to being happy. You know, just stick around with me. Please give this a shot. And, you know, like feeling literally helpless. You know, I've done a lot of difficult things. I've been very broke. I've been very poor at multiple times in my life. But when you don't have any say in the situation and there's literal things going on, it's like, you know, that led me to a very suicidal place that, you know, I don't share a whole lot. But, you know, it's just like when you feel like you're not good enough and you feel like there's nothing you can do, and both of you are having conversations, you know, you're irrational, you're talking through these things. That became a really difficult moment in my life, but looking back on it, it's also one of the most important moments of my life. I can remember, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, I have a stepfather who I've considered my dad all my life. And when this was going on, I wanted to remove myself from the situation because I just felt like I made a horrible mistake by having, you know, Knox, by having our second son. And I was like, why did I think this was a good idea? That, you know, I don't want to lose my wife. I don't want to go through this. I don't want to go through this difficult thing right now. And it made me really think back to my biological father, because I've never met him. I've never talked to him because he's never given a shit about me. And the perception I've had for a long time is he's a piece of shit. He doesn't care about me. I don't give a fuck about him. It's just a lot of hate, a lot of hostility. And I had an emotional breakdown one night because I got to thinking, I was like, if he felt anything like I feel right now, I can understand why he abandoned me. I can understand why he left me, never talked to me. Because what I feel like right now is I don't deserve to be a father. I'm not good enough. I'm selfish for wanting this for myself, and I shouldn't have willed this on my wife. I'm going to lose her because of my selfishness. And I'm having this emotional breakdown, multiple months of being in the lowest places that we've ever been. There's just so many emotions from that time period, and feeling like I don't deserve what I have, like I've been selfish, I'm a terrible person. And it wasn't until I got to a place of, just honest conversation, mostly with Jess, around the fact of like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I became a different person. I've got so frustrated in those moments. She's got so frustrated with me. We hate those moments. We don't like to revisit those moments, but we like to at least acknowledge that we are in a fantastic place. I'm an over-indexer, and I think a lot of creatives are. When things are really low, I over-index on the low, and I go really low. And I tell myself, I'm this horrible person. I don't deserve this. Inversely, when things are going really great, like in our relationship, when we have a small win, something, I'm like, I over-index this all the way over here. I don't fully resolve the issue. That became a common thing that we talk about, and I'm proud of us for working through that, and me just saying like, listen, I need you to hold me accountable for over-indexing and thinking that things are great. I need you to just literally tell me things aren't great right now. I'm not happy with you. I'm glad we're having a good conversation, but things aren't fixed. And I need to hear that. I need that bluntness, because I need to be reminded that I need to be doing the work. I need to be supportive. I need to not think that this issue is solved and leave you out here until this blows up into something bigger. This whole moment ended up becoming really important for me because I had to be honest with creative partners, like in the freelancing side of things. It's not looked upon well to call off of jobs. Like there was a fear when I'm, on a job and I'm having a difficult moment because we're in the hospital in the middle of the night or whatever's happening. And I have to say, hey, I've reached out to some people that are going to replace me. I'm really sorry about this, but my family comes first. So the most difficult thing for me is that, is feeling utterly helpless in a situation. And I look back on that now, and it is that commitment to doing the hard work, to embracing the suck, to working through that, and just being really patient with each other. I've never had to be more patient with myself and with Jess to have the life that we have. And I love my family so much, and I'm so happy, but I also have this experience. So if things get hard, I can always pull back on this and I can say, this is a hard situation. I can identify that. But have I done hard things before? Yes, I have. So I'm going to cross this challenge off too, and I'm going to work through it. I'm going to remember this.
Is that what you feel like, and maybe it is exactly what you said, is that what you feel like you uncovered about yourself through all of that? Or is there something else?
I think it was a reminder, because when we had Locke, we went through not the same situation, honestly, totally different. It was like sleep deprivation, the challenges of that, becoming more friends than, romantic partners. And we had to rediscover what romance looked like. And, that was a challenging time too. And I was like, we're prepared for that. I mean, even leading up to Knox, that was a lot of the conversation. I was like, it's probably going to get like this. I'm going to be okay with that. We're going to rediscover ourselves. We just need to be patient with each other. Man, we got punched in the face with something totally different. I'm like, was not prepared for this. But I think, I remember listening to a podcast in one of the lower moments and one of the guests saying something. I'm like, yeah, this is me. I've been here before. We've beat tough stuff before. And, I remember coming home and I was like, listen, things aren't great. But I just want to let you know that we're going to beat this. We're going to get through this. And here's why. We did hard stuff before, and I just need to remind you, and I need to remind myself every once in a while, that we're committed to each other. I think just over the years, it's realizing what's worth fighting for, and it's like, this is the most significant relationship I have in my life, and that relationship is very important to, me and my kiddos too. And it's like, she's been there for so many difficult moments in my life. I've been there for so many difficult moments in her life. And sometimes those emotions are really high, and I just need to give her, the permission. She needs to give me the permission to be able to experience those emotions. And we've just had to become more patient with each other. I'm a patient person, but, emotions do run high in any relationship that's worthwhile. Sometimes it's like when those emotions were high, it's just like, actions matter too. I can remember one day I had to be somewhere for meetings, and I canceled meetings because, we were leaving on a very negative note. And, at that time, mind you, I'm the sole income provider, and she knows me being in a meeting means that we might be closing the next job or whatever. And I remember we had this difficult conversation. I stopped, I canceled my whole day. And I said, and she's like, "What? We need that money. We need this." And I said, "You know what I need? I need you. I need you to be here. And you're the most important thing." And I can say all day long that I'm a family person, or, I care about my family and they come first. But I said, right now, I'm showing you with my actions that I'm going to sit here through this difficult conversation. We're going to hash this out because it matters. If I walk away right now and something doesn't go the right way, you're not going to feel heard, loved, or appreciated. Right now, you need to be heard, loved, and appreciated. This client can wait. And if they can't respect me for this thing, if they don't want to reschedule with me for whatever reason, then they're not a client for me. They're not adding value to me, because I do everything for my family, for my friends, for the people that matter in my life. Do I want to do good work? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it needs to support my lifestyle, my goals, the people that actually matter in my life. That's probably been the clearest thing for me, is like really hearing some of these ideas that sound great, but then creating the actions and behavior that follow through with that. And then now being on, it's easy to say, "Oh yeah, you're a family man," or "I'm a family man," or "I do this," or "I do that." And it looks good, and I could boast about it all day long. But I get to go home, and, we have constant things where it's like, the kids are in bed, and maybe we're going to sit up and we're going to watch a show or a movie together. Or maybe we're going to, stay up and we're going to, talk about old memories. Or, often we'll scroll through our phones and look at pictures of the kids, whether it's old or new, and talk about those things. Or, as our kids start to develop and they have new challenges, as parents, we have to talk about, how do we think we're going to handle this? How soft or how hard, or what strategies do you think that we can go through to help, challenge this behavior, or to help Locke, see things with less attitude or whatever. And we're constantly working on our relationship, but we're also working on ourselves as humans too, and how we want to tackle things, how we want to navigate these difficult things, because it makes everything better in the process.
A common thread throughout this conversation so far has been all of these hard things, right? In business and life, all that sort of stuff. And I ask this in a positive way, because I know we'll get to a positive answer, but I want you to answer this honestly. Not that you haven't up to this point, but dig up an honest answer. Do you ever get tired of doing the hard things and taking it head on and saying, "Yeah, I got this"? Why or why not?
Oh, man. In some ways, yes. In some ways, no is the honest answer. I'll start with, in some ways, yes, because, in so many ways, I do feel like I've channeled a new potential for value. But at the other ways, I'm like, man, my potential still doesn't feel met a lot of times. And selfishly, it's like, I do wish people could see and understand my gift a little bit easier sometimes, because I know there's a gift there. I'm not even saying that cockily. I confidently know I make people's lives better. And there are a ton of people that give me shots and opportunities. I'm so grateful for them. But there's also a whole lot of people that I'm like, you're missing out on my gift, and I just wish you'd give me the time of day. Or I just wish that you wouldn't, press me so hard in these ways. Or sometimes I wish you would let me help you. It's like I have to pull teeth sometimes to help people. Whether it's just a casual conversation, maybe it's someone family, maybe it's someone, whatever the case may be, is like, sometimes I'm just like, I just wish you would let me use your gift. I wish you would use my gift. And that does get exhausting when I'm like, how do I get people to see that? How do I get people to understand that? I feel like in a lot of ways, it's like I've been doing all the things. I hear the successful stories, and, sure, I can always get better. There's always room to improve. There's always room to grow. It's an infinite game for sure. But at the same time, like, I wish it would be a little bit easier sometimes. I do. I really, really do. I will say it's easier in many ways. For a long time, you would make the joke and other people would make the joke that I'm cursed because I just have some of the worst bad luck I can think of so many times, whether it's a flat tire after a successful production day, whether it's, getting robbed, whether it's whatever the case may be. I've definitely had my fair share of difficult moments. But at the same time, I'm grateful for all those difficult moments because I do think it makes me who I am. It makes me very resilient. And it also makes me a fierce competitor. I mean, not to toot my own horn, but it's like not many people can go toe-to-toe with me the same way that I can go, have the same endurance, have the same tenacity, and have the mindset that I have. I mean, it's made me a rare breed in many ways. And I think as people start to uncover that and realize that, they kind of are in awe at, like, this isn't bullshit. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many new people come in, like, since that 2019 version of us of putting out content and stuff. Oh, yeah, you're saying the thing. And then it's like, well, if you actually strip back 2014 or 2011 or it's like, oh, you've been literally doing this for this long. I'm like, yeah, now I'm just amplifying the message because this message matters. I know it matters, and I want to make an impact. If you want to push back on this idea because you don't agree with it, you can stick with that fixed mindset. But for me, I'm going to keep challenging the norm. I'm going to keep pushing through. I'm going to keep, doing the hard things that matter. But, not to make it about a book, but like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Everybody loves that book because they're like, yeah, F word and don't give an F. And I'm like, it's really a book about energy. And what I loved about that book was finding things to focus my energy into and realizing that there were a lot of things that I was putting my energy into that probably didn't deserve it. Mm-hmm. And that's been valuable in a lot of ways of doing the hard work. What things deserve my energy and what things don't. And being at peace with the fact of, like, I don't have to be anything and everything to everyone, but I need to be the right thing to the right people. A big part of that strategy with freelance was instead of working with 14 to 20 people a year, I was like, I'm going to work with 5 to 6 that appreciate me. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Those relationships are so much deeper. I'd like to think that I'm friends with those people. I think I'm friends with them. We text pretty frequently. We have great conversations. I think I improve their business. And in return, they improve my lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. And I asked that, of course, not from a place to, like, challenge you to dig into that. But, everybody knows that you're a hard worker. There's not one person that's going to sit and be like, oh, yeah, Josh Emerick, that guy's lazy. But I asked that because I think there's so much value in someone hearing how hard the work still is for the hard worker. Because I think a lot of people can look at hard workers who take on difficult things and they do all this stuff and they say, oh, they've got it figured out. They've got their system down. They've got their process down. They know how to take it on. They like the challenge, blah, blah, blah. They've got it. So I think there's value in uncovering, let's talk about how sometimes we can do the hard work, but damn it, I don't want to.
Yeah, I want to interject for a second because now that I've been coaching for a little bit, the common thread is creatives tend to be very hard workers. The problem is they work in the wrong areas. Mm-hmm. They really double down on how do I get great at this craft, how do I get great at that. I'm not going to knock that any day, but most of the time those aren't the skills that make the biggest difference. Over the years, and what I'm constantly teaching is like, are you really identifying the areas that you need to focus on right now? Cutting the new demo reel actually isn't any good for you when you don't have any clients. Been there. Not a good place to be. Also feels really horrible when you cut the most epic demo reel and you don't have any clients and you're like, well, I must suck. No, you don't suck. What you might not be good at is thinking about your experience or your process or any of these things like that. And for me, it's giving the gift of hard work in the right direction, helping people have some direction in that. I wish that I had that gift many, many years ago. But at the same time, it's kind of scary to ask for permission. And it's so odd, like being in the seat that I'm in now, so often it's like they're scared to ask the permission. So I've become a mind reader, mostly in the sense of, you're probably experiencing this. Feel free to interject or tell me I'm full of shit if I am right now. Right. But hey, I have a sense that this might be a challenge that you're in. Oh my God. yeah, that is what I haven't got this right, or I'm too worried to do this, or I've been spending all my time over here. Okay, well, if Josh has to be the guy to give you permission to say these things over here don't actually matter and it's all in your mind, and like these are the things that maybe you need to focus on and they'll make the biggest difference. And by doing this over here, it'll actually make you more creatively empowered to do these things that you really love doing too. It's like, no way. Life can be that good? Yeah, it can.
So we're talking about the permission thing and the coaching thing. If, I don't care who it is, if somebody were to show up to you right now and give you permission for something you've been searching for permission for now, what would you want them to tell you? What do you want someone to give you permission for?
I think this is just because it's top of mind, but to knock on doors more often, to realize that I do have a skill in a superpower, and I've been leaning into that, especially in the last couple of months of like, people aren't going to come to me. I need to start coming to them, especially if I have an idea. Sometimes I need to go knock on their door and say, hey, I'd love to just have a casual conversation. I hate sales. I hate being salesy. My style and what's been successful for me as a salesperson, because as a business owner, you're a salesperson, has always been to educate and in some ways to influence. And, I always joke around about the word manipulation because it has a negative connotation. But I love the word manipulation because I like to do it in a positive way. I like to insert ideas and make people believe that they're their ideas without them even knowing it, or give them kind of the permission to steal things. So to me, the advice, the thing that I want is I want more people to tell me, you have the permission to help me. Because every time I help someone else, it ends up helping me. It's not like I'm just doing that. Like, I'm helping people that help me. If I make someone else better in the process, it makes me better in the process. Like, so much of what I'm doing now with Mylan is like, okay, I can be a freelancer, Josh, but also my real sweet spot is my network, my creative community, the legacy that I built, the way that I build teams. Like, I love that more than anything. So one of the permission points is I've been infusing the idea of like, hey, like you can use me as a freelancer, but our model with Mylan, we have our direct clients, that's creative partnership. Another model for that is video production partner. And what that looks like is this. You give me a budget, I manage that budget, I reverse engineer it this way, and I make it really focused on the experience. That's the short of it. But digging in a little bit more, it's like, I love making this complicated thing so that you can focus on getting your clients or managing your clients or doing this thing and just making this often stressful and technical thing feel like it's the most relaxed thing in the world. Because I have crazy years of experience, not to toot my own horn, but if you've been on a set with me,
toot away.
Anyone who's been on a production set with me that I've had any sort of leadership role, most people are like, that was easy, one of the easiest things I've ever been on. That's by design. That's my intention. If a shoot is hard and I'm on it, man, I must be pretty beat. It's very rare that you're going to see Josh Emerick beat down off of a video set.
And if he's wearing shorts, he's really beat down.
That's happened like 3 times.
If he's taking pants off and putting shorts on, he is done for. You will know he's beaten if you see him in shorts on a video set.
But for me, I think that permission piece, is a big deal. And a lot of what I've been leaning into is my strategy a lot of times like, hey, why don't we just catch up and talk sometime? And they think that we're just going to have a casual conversation, and I always have some sort of agenda. I really do. And that agenda is usually to influence some sort of idea in a positive way, to manipulate someone to be a better version of themselves.
It's a positive agenda.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I love that. I love getting to have those conversations. Oftentimes I'll go into it with one thing, it might be a production partner and we're just going to talk about a project. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to bring something else up that, might be valuable to them or has been valuable to me. And so often we end up on an extra 45 minutes and they're like, wow, this was cool. I needed this. And I'm like, yeah, I did too. This actually was really great.
Right. Handful more questions and we'll wrap this episode up. But I want to keep them deep thinkers because this is what happens when you return to the show. We don't have a story and timeline to talk about anymore, so we got to talk about other things. What's something that you wish people understood better about Josh Emerick?
Gosh, dang. I'm not a video guy. The label would be video producer. I think that makes sense. I really, that whole challenge the norm thing that I keep coming back to is like, I'm obsessed with making people better in one way or another. A lot of the times that's through video productions. It's what people know to use me for. But, I'll use Elevate Creative as an example, and like I'll use a video project as an example. But my unique skill is not in, hey, I got this red camera and I can do this. But how do I give someone confidence? I'm obsessed with confidence and how I give other people confidence. And I remember early on, they hadn't shot on red. They were Sony shooters, and like, oh, but we won't be able to match or this or that. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just make a little video tutorial. And like, I just did this impromptu, where I'm like, I took the footage from that. I created the LUT for them, and I showed them. I did like a screen process and showed them how to, match the footage and go through this. I've done this for other people too. And they're always like, wow, I feel so much better about using this red camera now. So a lot of times people have intimidation factors. Maybe it's a piece of technology. Maybe it's navigating a different budget type. I can think of projects where it's been Mark or Elevate or really anyone that's like, this is beyond our growth point. Like, we haven't done anything this big. And, it's by developing that deeper sense of trust of like, we're really excited about this, but we're also going to be trusting you to do this a lot of times. And guess what? Deep down, Josh, he's a little bit nervous because he hasn't actually done this either, but I'm not letting them know that. Instead, I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just do this. We'll go about this. And like, I've done it long enough to know that if I ask the right questions and I think about their experience first, it becomes really easy to design this. And it's not about the number. It's not about the tools. It's not about any of that. And, in my last one, I talked about going to school for engineering and never fulfilling that. I was like, oh, I can't do the thing. I see myself more as an engineer now than ever. Being a problem solver is like, I love that. I love being a leader. And as a leader, I love infusing confidence into people in the way that I solve problems, in the way that I make complex things as simple as possible. So whether I'm talking, to a creative about running their business, whether I'm on a video production set where I'm making a director better, or I'm helping to sell a project, or I'm leading a team, or I'm stepping into new territory, for someone, that's all very exciting and exactly the same for me because I'm making these complex systems as simple as possible, asking the right questions, and bringing out the best. Like, I'm not obsessed with being a creative genius. I'm obsessed with making other people geniuses. I'm a genius maker, and I love that. That's really fun for me.
I'm going to ask this question with the caveat of it can't be what you get to see other people walk away with. It has to be what you walk away from the situation with. Because this entire episode, we have continued to talk about creating things for other people, doing things for other people. You're now coaching. There's tons of value in that. All of those are amazing things. Why do you like helping people so much? What value does it give you? Does it validate your work and your energy that you've put in? Does it give you a place, a purpose in something? Does it just simply fulfill you and it's fun to talk to people? Like, what value do you get from helping people? Why do you love helping people so much? Because I think often you've definitely gotten better at this and uncovered a way to put yourself first in the right ways and family first in the right ways. But I think we've both, over the years, put a lot of other people before ourselves in the wrong ways. And now I think you've uncovered that. But why that somewhat near obsession in helping other people?
Man.
Shouldn't have came back on the show. I got deeper questions.
That obsession word is the word that I was going to lead with because... gosh, man, I talk about this with Jess all the time, but, going through elementary, middle school, high school, I never, love was a big deal for me. And, watching romance films or movies around, romance, I never thought that I'd be a loved person. So, that sounds so depressing and sad, but, I just didn't see anything special about myself. The introvert thing really reared itself. Moody, was the social butterfly for me. If I didn't have him, I don't know if I would have had all those relationships.
We talked a lot about him in episode 1 with you. Yeah.
But I'm still endlessly grateful for. I've always been good at being supportive. And I still play myself that way very much as a DP on set, or in even my marriage. It's like, I'm very much not the leader, but in many ways I'm the supportive leader of like, oh, here's how we get there. Here's how we reverse engineer this. So that obsession, like what I want, like I want to be loved. I really do want to be loved, but I don't want to be loved out of pity. I don't want to be loved to feed my ego. I want to be loved with, for who I am and for the actions that make me happy. When I think about, channeling, like I'm a big fan of when I'm dealing with difficult things, thinking about, mostly comic book characters and how I deal with things. So like anytime I've had to have a difficult conversation, I very much channel my Captain America. Not my favorite character, but very much in the sense of like, what is just? What is the right thing to say? And sometimes that's the difficult thing. Sometimes it's the thing that I have to say of, you're actually being a pretty terrible and difficult person. And if I don't say that, I'm going to resent you for that. And the last thing I want to do is resent you for that. When I'm being the innovator, it's like, how do I channel my Iron Man? But I want to be loved for me. And the longer I've gone in this, the less I've relied on those things. And it's just become a part of my DNA. It's like Josh might idolize the Captain America approach, but now it's become the Josh approach because I've added my own style onto it. The way I innovate and tackle problems has become the me way. And, when people say things about me, like earlier this week, Trevor texted me and he's like, hey, thank you for introducing me to the Elevate team. Like, I love working with these guys. It's so enjoyable to be with them. And it's like, I'm not just looking out for myself. I want my creative community to experience the same things. And I want to set up my creative partners to know how to work with people. And it's all this big ecosystem of the world can be a lot better and a lot happier and a lot healthier if instead of waiting for us to get that energy, we lead with that energy. And very much in the last few years, I've led with that energy of, I'm going to give. I'm going to push hard. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to say the things. I don't care. I'm obsessed with getting that out there, whether anyone receives it or not. All I want to do is say the things I want to say, the way I need to say them, and to be myself. And I'm obsessed with that. And in return, a lot of these good things happen for me. I'm very grateful for the life that I have in this day and age. I don't just show up to my marriage to say, I just want a wife that doesn't argue with me. I want a wife that'll take care of stuff for me. No, I'm constantly giving in small ways, and she's giving in small ways. And, there's a reciprocity, or I don't know how to say the word. Reciprocation.
Yeah.
When you kind of, go about things. And I just, I want to be loved for me, not for anything else like that. And so much of that comes from the way I lead my life. So I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to be unapologetic. When people do dumb things, they're going to get straightforward feedback. I can think of people that I've worked with on sets in the past where I've literally told them, hey, just so you know, you're not doing a very good job. I think you can actually do a better job. I'm not saying this to be mean to you, but we can do better. You can do better, and I can do better. I can own that I've messed up in this way. I need you to understand that I'm not okay with how you've done this. And together, here's how I think we can work together. Do you have any input on this? And that's been really successful in building stronger relationships and also being able to not be resentful, not be frustrated. The same thing applies for my friendships. The same thing applies for my marriage. The same thing applies for people in general. It's just like, just be yourself. Like, the more I can lean into that, the more I can be myself, the more I receive love the way that I want to receive it. To come back to that is like, I'm so grateful for the marriage that I have today. But, if I was talking to 15-year-old me, I'd be like, oh, you're an unlovable person. No one will ever love you. You're a quiet, introverted, weird kid that's too afraid to make the first move. And every indication of success in movies or whatever is the bold person, and you're not a bold person. So you'll never be worthy of love. I'm still not the first person to stand up. But I guarantee I'll be the person who will go deeper, more vulnerable, and more connective than anyone else. And I'll make a damn difference in your life.
Right now, I want you to pretend time travel is real, and this isn't the question stolen from Short Story Long that Drama asks his guests. we're going to reverse it. We're going to change it up a little bit. Right now, a future version of you shows up to you right now at this point in your life. Future you shows up. What are you really hoping that they're sharing with you? What are you hoping that they're telling you about your future?
I know he's not going to hope to tell me anything. He's going to say, you're making a wonderful impact on the creative community. You have amazing kids that, love you and are grateful for the time that you've had in their life, the involvement that you've had in their life. You have a wife that loves you because you put in the work, you do the things. You are flourishing in your business, whatever that is, and in the multiple, video production businesses, the coaching efforts that you're putting in, the community efforts that you're putting into action. You're making an impact. You're making a difference. And I'm grateful for all the work that you did to build me up to who I am today. Because at this point in time, that might sound really arrogant, but, I'm really dedicated to relationship building. I've leaned into that fully as like, everything that I have in my life is due to the quality of relationships that I've built, the way that I go about building them. And anytime I've been frustrated in my life, it's been because I've lacked in that area, or I've got stagnant, or I've got sluggish or lazy. And I'm pushing hard right now in the right directions, and I'm not pushing in the directions that don't matter anymore. All those directions lead to connecting the dots to the right people, and those people connecting the dots to me. And it's just a matter of myself catching up to those opportunities.
Last couple things, and then we're going to wrap it up. I don't know if you've been listening to any recent episodes all the way through or not, or if you stopped listening to this show after you were on it forever ago, just checking out the 15-minute Fridays. But I have been doing a new thing towards the end of these episodes where I give the guest the opportunity to put me in the hot seat for a second and fire a question my way. So this is your opportunity. I've been asking you all these questions this entire time. Josh Emerick, episode 2, you're back. Is there a question that you want to ask me before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I do. So for me, you've been doing this for 3-4 years now, and I'm sure there are so many times we have conversations about frustration and things like that, and I try to remind you all the time of how important you are to me, let alone all the other people, the impact that you make. Because you do make an impact, and this show is such a source of inspiration. And whether people are finding it now or they're finding it way later, when we talked about this show, the biggest encouragement that I was giving you was, this is going to be a gold mine for people someday. And you've consistently built this. You put in so much work into building this show. As both a guest and someone who listens to the show, I've gotten so much value from these conversations. So, for you, 2 questions. What has been your biggest takeaway with building this show? Like, what has been the gift that it's given you? And what is the impact that you hope to make with this show as you continue into the future?
First part of that, I think the biggest gift that it's given me has been unlocking a confidence in connecting with people. Like, I've always known that I love to sit and talk with people and all that sort of stuff. Can pretty well establish that when you and I sit in a Wendy's for 6 hours, right? But now it's given me so many new friendships. It's given me so many new even connections in whatever way. I often joke about this show being my cheat code to make friends, right? And I think like that is, my biggest value. It's not necessarily connecting with people and having these new opportunities or whatever, but it's more so unlocking that in myself and really showing myself that I know how to talk to people. And I don't mean that in an interview sense to make a good podcast. I mean, I know how to connect with people. And I think that is something that I hugely value and that I love to do. Of course, I probably wouldn't have committed to doing a podcast if I didn't love to connect with people. But I think it has reaffirmed that feeling for me because I've been able to sit and get people to be vulnerable and honest most of the time. I would say the majority of people that are on this show are people that I don't know or don't know that well, at least, But I can still sit, and I've been able to uncover and add to my strength of being able to sit down with anybody and talk to them as if we've known each other for 10 years. And that has been super fun for me, to sit and be reassured that I do have that value, because then it makes me more confident in everyday conversations. Sitting and talking to somebody, it's been able to, I can sit and like, I've done, I don't know what number this exact episode is going to be, but around this time, I'm like 80 of these episodes in. So we're almost at 100 episodes. I have sat down in that sense, with the exception of you coming on here a second time, with almost 100 different people in that process, right? That means that I've been able to navigate all of those conversations. I've gathered all of those stories. I've went on those journeys with all of those people. And that, outside of a podcast or anything like that, that gives me energy. That energizes me. I feel like I absorb a tiny bit of every single person that I connect with in some way. And I learn a lesson from all of those people. But I get to then carry those lessons outside of here, just in the same way that I hope, in kind of the second part of the question, that's what I hope the takeaway from this show becomes. I want somebody to be sitting and getting from this show what I got from Short Story Long back in 2017, what you got from Short Story Long back in 2017. I want someone to, yes, sit and be like, wow, we're all more in common than I thought. And wow, that person's story, they don't do anything that I do, but man, their story had a lot of similarities that mine did. And wow, I feel connected to them. I feel like I know them better, or know them in general, just because I listened to a podcast. I want all of those things, but I want that takeaway. I want it to inspire somebody. It's not just like, yes, I want this to be entertaining, and sure, I want it to educate, but I want it to inspire. Because I want it to do for someone else what things like this did for me. And the cool part is that every single conversation I have inspires me no matter what. So at the end of the day, that is what it gives to me. You know what I mean? All of these conversations, yes, it gets turned into content and it gets put out on the internet and it's promoted and it's shared and I want people to check it out and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm getting to do something that I absolutely love to do, that otherwise I would have to sit and be like, hey, do you want to go get coffee with me and maybe sit for 2 hours and hopefully I can talk about your life with you? So in that sense, like, yes, of course it's a cheat code, but that's the thing. It has really, really instilled new confidence in me that I know not just how to talk to people or how to guide a conversation or how to fill awkward moments in a weird moment or something and get out of it, even that weird skill, but more so connecting to people. I understand my value in being able to connect with people now, because now in everyday situations, I have seen with me leading with this confidence of learning this about myself, I see what that does for other people. I see other people trusting me with very valuable information or very valuable moments in their life that they're not sharing with anybody else. I've been entrusted with that information, and that's because I'm being entrusted with information doing a 2-hour show called What You Don't Hear, and I've learned that skill, and it's not just the art of conversation, but it's the art of connecting. And I think that's what this has done for me, and then in turn, I hope that inspires somebody else. That's what I want out of this. I want someone to hear and, of course, relate to all the things, but I want them to walk away being inspired in some way.
Talk about giving.
I think that answered the question. Final 2 questions for you. I'm going to ask a very simple question in a very deep way, and you can answer it however you want.
Cool.
What do you want?
I mean, it's easy. I want to be happy, and that is, it's doing the hard things. It's doing things that are worthwhile. It's setting goals with my wife, with our clients, with our crew, with you, and achieving those things. You know, I'm a high achiever. I like to get stuff done. You know, that's what I want. I want to have a life that I look back on that I can say I was happy. I want to leave a legacy behind. Like, those things are all interconnected for me.
All right, final question. You've done it before, so I don't know. Let's see how it goes the second time. Right now, I want you to pretend like everybody in the world is connected on the other end of the microphone, and you have a live mic and you can talk to all of them. You get to share something with them. You're getting a unique opportunity. You get the sequel movie. Everybody else just got their one big speech at the end of the movie that they're connecting and sharing with the rest of the world. You're getting a sequel right now. You're getting another opportunity to speak and share with everyone in the world. What is it you want them to hear this time?
I don't remember what I said last time, but maybe it's the same thing, maybe it isn't. And I think it's just the value of self-love. You know, if there's one thing I want people to walk away from is you can work as hard as you want, you can have all these things, you can have goals. And I think learning to love ourselves is one of the most key things in anything that we're doing. Just learning to give ourselves permission to, have a day to relax and watch a TV show, play a video game, go for a walk, whatever it is that checks the boxes for you. And if you haven't done this in a long time, when I was really burnt out, I remember the thing that my wife said to me was, you become a very boring person. You don't have any hobbies. You're so obsessed with building this business, and it's making you a boring person. That hurt, and I didn't like hearing that, but it was true. And it wasn't until I started accepting that, hey, I like to cook. Maybe I should do that a little bit. Hey, walking is actually really enjoyable for me. Finding ways to connect with my sons in different ways. Reading books. All of these things are really enjoyable, and they fulfill my life while also motivating me towards my goals. So it's like that glass is half full side of things. Like, you do have to fill yourself up to be able to give to other people, to be able to do these other things. So it's like you can have all these intentions to make impact and do that sort of stuff, but you'll get burnt out at some point in time if you don't give yourself the permission to love yourself, to take care of yourself, and to re-inspire yourself from time to time. So I think self-love is probably the most foundational thing. It's probably a little bit cliche, but I'm also a firm believer in looking at what that is for yourself. If you look at your network as your net worth, or it's all in the relationships that you have, or work harder or work smarter instead of harder. Like, all these things sound really simple, but I do think it's asking ourselves what that looks like for me. Not saying that's what it looks like for Josh, so I need to do it for myself. It also comes into the how you do anything is how you do everything. A lot of people have a kind of pre-programmed way of doing things for a long time. Sometimes that needs tweaked. Other times it's just embracing, this is how I am, so I need to find the version of this that gives me the thing that I want. So, what does that look like for you? What does self-love look like for you? Are you feeling burnout? Are you feeling frustrated? What can you do about that today that's going to make, a ripple effect? A week, a month, a year, 10 years down the line.
I love it. We just made another podcast. We just made that happen.
Yeah.
For the second time. First ever return guest for a full-length episode.
That's wild.
You did it.
I did it.
You did it. And there's been 150-minute Fridays, and we got another 2 and whatever amount of hours.
I mean, it's so funny is like I talk all the time with you, but like this, like having to think about things in a timely manner and break things down, I'm like, wow, like I kind of forgot that I did all this. Like I always talk about invisible progress with other people, but this really made me kind of look back. And I'm like, I forgot we did that. I kind of forgot we did that. Like you were talking about like not being able to unlock things. Literally wild.
Yeah. Honestly, that ended up being a little bit different than what I thought it was going to be, because there was a lot of stuff that I was like, you know what? I just need to treat this like I really just don't know this person. But also, how can I reshape some of these questions? Because we talked about the story. Folks, if you want the early years of Josh Emerick, go listen to part 1. This is part 2. We had to dig into some different things. So before we officially wrap up, we talked about like the coaching stuff. We talked about all that sort of stuff. What do you want people to go seek out right now? Where can they follow you? What do you want them to follow online and go check out?
I'm going to give a couple of plugs. Usually I just say Instagram because that's where I'm most active. You can follow me personally at JM Emerick. If you're into music videos and that sort of stuff and just curious about that, we've been doing that for a decade. We're kind of badasses at it too. We've made some pretty cool stuff. If you like music videos and how we do that, we have a blog over there. We have a bunch of cool music videos. We write as much as we make things anymore, and you can see that at jcp.co. Myelin.company, that is our video production company for commercial businesses, creative partnerships. A lot of great things there. We're putting big educational efforts over there. We're putting a lot of effort into those areas where we're challenging the norms in quite different ways. You know, we're not a video production company. We're not an agency. We're what we call a creative partnership and strategist in many ways. And that's a fun thing if that's of interest. And then, you know, you got Teal Collar, which is my, you know, oddly enough, started off as us wanting to do LUTs and presets and stuff. And I quickly realized I'm not that person. I'm an ideapreneur. I like to challenge the way things are thought. So a lot of my things are system process oriented. We're all about being organized as being creative. So we have creative assets over there, and that's where I also do my coaching through too. So a lot of blogs, if you're a creative, if you're a business owner, a lot of those things are very connective in that way of like, oh, how do we challenge the way we think? How do we think differently about our business? How do we create confidence? And what I say a lot of times is, how do I get creatives out of the dark? Because we all feel very alone, and we internalize these things, and we don't talk to anyone. And the creative community really lacks human connection. So even if you're not hiring me for coaching services or anything, a lot of the video content, the writing content that we're doing is all focused around how do I give people the gift of these are conversations you should have. Here's some permission to have them, to think about them, and to realize that being a starving artist, feeling like, you know, charging for your creativity is a sin. I'm trying to break those ideas down and give tangible action with them. And then the last plug is Preserve, our wedding company. We're still doing things there. That's a different capacity anymore. But yeah, we still do the thing. Those are all the things. You can check those things out. I love building those things. And they create a lot of fulfillment in my life.
And you can follow him at JM Emerick on Instagram, the thing he was wanting to avoid in the first place. Before we wrap up, quick question. Your number one book you would recommend to somebody with a one-sentence explanation as to why they should check it out. Go.
Okay, I'll say Adam Grant's book, Give and Take. That is probably the top one for me because I think it's very relative to success ladders, and it also gives a lot of good actionable things as well as ideas around what success really looks like in the long run, not just in the short run.
Good. You used and as well. You kept that one sentence flowing. You didn't give a break point. That was good. It worked. We just made another podcast. That's it. And also I have to pee really bad.
Hell yeah.
Sweet. That was fun.
That was pretty good.
That was fun. I felt different than the first before. I am very stoked that Josh and I made this happen. Now, pulling the curtain back here a little bit, something funny, actually. Josh actually kind of does not like his original episode and his original interview on this show, which was, I think, like episode 4, maybe, if I remember correctly. And to be honest, we joke about it a lot because at the time, Josh was just not good at being interviewed or talking on a podcast. There's really no other way to put it. And he would tell you the exact same thing. So we joke about his original episode a lot, honestly, even though, like, I'm going to be totally honest here. I'm not really going to downplay it completely. It still is a good one for sure. But honestly, just so different from his storytelling style now. So with that, and the fact that honestly just so much happened in the last few years, I am genuinely very stoked that I got him back on the show to sit down for a couple more hours, one more time, and be able to share the new parts of his story with all of you guys in new ways. So I hope you enjoyed it. I really do. I'll be trying to make more of these sort of update episodes happen in the future, actually, bringing back certain guests for kind of new return conversations to return to the show at some point. But yeah, this one was just very fun to do. And of course, I told Josh this in person, but I cannot thank him enough for being as open and vulnerable on this show as he was here in this episode. I'm just very glad that we got to make this conversation happen and make a slightly different type of conversation happen for this show. For one of these full story episodes, this one took a little bit of a, I don't know, I got to ask some different questions in some different ways, and it was fun. So yeah, a different style of full story episode, having a guest return and kind of catching up with them in a way. So yeah, I hope you guys liked it. If you did, I would really appreciate you telling somebody about it. Post it, share it, send it via carrier pigeon to your closest friend. Do something with it. But of course, in general, at the end of the day, I do ask you a couple things. Just follow the show, if anything, at WYDH Pod if you haven't yet. Subscribe and follow on whatever platform you check this out on. Rate and review, all the goods I can ask you. You can find these in video form as well on my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Ross Theisen. Also, everything Josh does now will, of course, be linked and listed in the show notes. All the cool video stuff, all the coaching assets, it's all there where you can follow him at Emerick. Also, a little secret plug here at the end for those of you still listening. If you want to hear Josh in a totally different style of podcast, like completely different and very, very unserious, and if you want to hear him kind of make a fool of himself along with me and some other friends, well, here's a spoiler. He's going to be in season 2 of my Empire of Comedy podcast. So yeah, there's a little plug for Whose Life Is It Anyway for you. Maybe go check that one out. But in general for this show, that'll do it for this episode. One more reminder of our sponsors for this week's episode. Ingram Audio. They're aiming to make your process of making music a little more simple and streamlined, and they're doing that with their new product, the Producer Kit. So visit ingramaudio.co for purchase details and any other info you could need. And if you're looking for some concerts to go to, well, Promo West Productions is bringing a lot of those your way. Visit promowestlive.com to find all the information you need and find out what other shows are coming through Columbus, and then go and snag those tickets at axs.com. And if you're creative in the world of video, audio, or photo here in Ohio, or well, more so Columbus, then you can go check out Midwest Photo here in Columbus. They have got tons of services from gear rental, gear purchase, used gear, buy and sell, printing services, film development, and simply a knowledgeable and rad staff ready to help you with your photo needs at any time. Go check them out or visit impex.com for more information. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I cannot overstate how much I appreciate anyone ever checking out this show or really anything that I do. You're wonderful, and I will catch you in the next one, where I'll be sitting down with my next guest, whom you may or may not know of, as they share their story like you've never heard it before.